Where is he? The girl responded, moving her index finger in sync. Your 3 questions are up. Now scram, before I change my mind and hurt you. Tell me now or I'll beat it out of you, yelled the blonde, as a small gust started picking up around him. Inchostro noticed white scales had started appearing around his cerulean eyes, which had actually become silted. Well, no wonder the boy was so good. The girl was surprised, but a smile still grew on her face. I was hoping you'd say that. Papier, WT you fucking interfere, he's mine. Inchostro gained a wild look as her smile stretched further, showing her slightly larger canines. Her clothes began dissolving into the black liquid from before, and Naruto was surprised when he saw her eyes turning silted as well. Suddenly scales started forming all over her body. The girl laughed at his shocked expression. What, you thought you were the only Dragon Slayer? The blonde's eyes widened. Dragon Slayer? Inchostro snorted. What, you don't even know that? Who taught you anyway? She shook her head briefly. Our magic is a type of lost magic taught by dragons, called dragon interception. Because of that, we are known as Dragon Slayers. The blonde was still shocked at the explanation. Dragon interception magic. And then he realized it. He could use air the same way as a sky dragon, while at the same time his scales made him immune to all air magic attacks. In a way, he really could oppose a dragon. He shook his head briefly at the thought and took his opponent's new appearance. By now her clothes had completely disappeared and her whole body was covered with scales. He was surprised to see they were colored the same way as her pale skin, even having the same tattoos at places. The only differences were at her chest, crotch, hands and feet where the scales were colored in black. The ones around the breasts and hips had taken the form of a bra and boxers, covering her private parts completely. He also noted the scales around her hands and feet looked denser and she actually had claws. His amazement wouldn't stop there though. The tattoo around her left leg started moving until it became real in the form of a swishing tail behind her. The one on her right arm did the same and took the form of a barbed wire whip. His opponent didn't seem to have any problems holding it either. While the final transformations were completing, Naruto realized he should get serious as well. He was hoping whatever Gerard was doing wouldn't take him much longer, because things could get ugly real fast. It didn't seem like Inchostro's partner would join in the fight, but one could never be sure. Power of the stout arms that tears the heaven. Fast winds that run the heaven. Amzu Vernier. Naruto chanted, making a wild wind form around him. It took the same shape as the wind bracelets from before, but this time they were also around his wrists as well. Despite the situation, Naruto couldn't help but feel excited. A real fight with another Dragon Slayer would show him exactly how strong he was. The scales around his eyes extended a bit on his forehead and also started forming around his whisker marks. He had a smile on his face as well, that showed his sharper canines, all the more reaffirming the bestial look he had. Sky Dragon's claws. He muttered, and the cyclones around his wrists picked up speed. They started extending down over his palm in what looked like a tornado, until his fingers were reached and 5 small tornado funnels were formed around them. Inchostro smiled as well. This was going to be fun. Let's see how strong your roar is. Ink dragons. She inhaled sharply, extending her chest and puffing her cheeks. Seeing her, Naruto immediately did the same. Sky dragons. They both looked at each other. Ruar. A blast of magical energy was expelled from their mouths, the only difference being Naruto's was made of air, while Inchostro's was from ink. The two attacks met at the center between them and fought for dominance, black meeting white and swirling together. But no conclusion was reached and they slowly dissipated. Inchostro smirked a bit. The kid was good if he could match her roar. Oh yeah, she was going to vent so much in this fight. She almost felt sorry for her target. Her smirk vanished though, when the blonde appeared in front of her in a burst of speed, while holding a ball of rapidly turning air. Sky Dragon's spiraling orb. Her eyes widened as he slammed the spell in her gut. Fuck, that was going to hurt. Inchostro barely had enough time to transform before she was sent flying into a tree. Naruto blinked as he felt warm liquid spray over his face. Wait, this wasn't supposed to happen. He didn't want to kill her, he hadn't used the spell at full power even. Why was there so much blood? He looked over himself in panic and noticed it was actually ink he was covered with. Little bastard. He looked up to see his opponent solidifying. Apparently, she had turned to ink before he hit her, which meant she wasn't dead. The only indication she was hurt was a small trickle of ink coming from her mouth. That was good. He didn't want to kill her, at least not before she answered his questions. Naruto was too distracted with his relief and his own thoughts to notice the Ink Dragon Slayer had slung her whip until it was too late. The only thing he could do was lift his left hand in defense and grimace at the pain from the barbed wire impaling and wrapping around it. He was further surprised when the girl pulled him towards her with huge force. He prepared his claws to pierce her only to pass right through her and slam into the tree. Inchostro took the opportunity while he was dazed to use another spell. Ink Dragon's Chameleon Scales. Immediately, the scales all over her body began changing color. She let go of her whip as it started dissolving in ink and started taking the appearance of her surroundings. The last thing Naruto saw of her when he came to from his daze was a confident smirk. The blonde grunted and stood up. He felt blood coming down from his forehead, no doubt a cut from when he hit the 3 Sky Dragon's healing palm. He muttered and swiped his hand over his wound, immediately feeling better. He then looked around and tried to locate his opponent. If she was camouflaged, then he would use his nose. He closed his eyes and concentrated on all the smells around him. Suddenly, Naruto turned to his left and pierced something with his claws. Inchostro's scales changed color to show her with a shocked expression. "How?" was the only thing he heard. The blonde smirked. "You are a dragon slayer, aren't you? We have an enhanced sense of smell after all." But the only response he got was the girl he had pierced dissolving into a puddle of ink. Too bad that was just an ink doppelganger though. He heard from behind, making him turn and strike another one of her copies. Gerard tried to keep watching the exchange while he was making his way towards Papier silently. So this was the power of a dragon slayer? The whole battle was very awe-inspiring, from the moment they had traded roars. It had to end though. By the way they were using magical energy, they would probably get tired pretty soon. Gerard prepared to make his move when he heard Sky Dragon's air explosion. He saw one of the ink doppelgangers burst into thousands of droplets. Naruto was getting a bit winded. The number of copies seemed never-ending, although he noted after he disposed of one, it would just remain on the ground as a puddle. So she couldn't control ink from afar, she had to expel it from her body like him or at least be in contact with it. So the real one would be the one that reformed. Okay then, if he could make copies of himself, what would he do? He would probably stay away from the battle and tire his opponent while continue making them. Well, it was working so far, though he was sure making so many doppelgangers probably tired her as well. At least he had air all around him to replenish some of his energy, but this couldn't continue forever. He closed his eyes and tried to expand his sense of smell in hopes of finding her. There. Sky Dragon's Divine Lance. Naruto yelled as a small tornado started forming next to him. He grabbed it by the upper part of the funnel, which immediately took the shape of a handle. He lifted it from the ground and hurled it towards a tree. The spearhead, which was the tip of the funnel, became increasingly pointy, as it drilled through the tree and impaled a surprised girl. Gotcha! Naruto yelled happily and started walking towards her. Not the time to turn and see a sideways spinning Inchostro, about to deliver a combo of axe kicks. He dodged the first one, but didn't have time for the second. Or the tail. Naruto hit the ground with force from the consecutive hits, letting out a grunt. He felt his head was spinning while he tried to get up. Ink Dragon's Viscid Ink. Naruto heard and he found his hands bound to the ground by some sort of sticky ink. He looked up slightly to see a smiling Inchostro. "Well, that was fun. You are pretty good short stuff," she remarked. "I had a lot of fun." "Now, you're the shorter one, weird eyes." The blonde grunted. The Ink Dragon Slayer's smile only became wider as she reached his chin with her tail and lifted it further, looking into his cerulean orbs. "Not from my point of view. You know, I'm beginning to think you'll always have energy for a witty remark. What should I do?" The girl was suddenly interrupted. Sky Dragon's roar. She barely turned only to see a hurricane-like blast slam into her and hurl her a couple of meters in the air until she dispersed into ink. Naruto looked to his left and saw Wendy rushing over. Her hands began glowing in blue, before she grabbed his aching head. Sky Dragon's healing palm. The blonde immediately felt better. He looked worriedly at his little sister though to find she was breathing heavily. "Thanks, Wendy. Don't use any more magic though or you'll pass out. That roar probably took a lot out of you." "Yes, Naru Ni-chan. The girl gasped as she fell on her knees. Naruto turned to the sticky ink over his arms. Sky Dragon's wings. He muttered, creating violent whirlwinds around them, getting rid of his bonds. He stood up and helped Wendy from the ground. You damn brats. The Marvels looked towards a reforming and very angry Inchostro. How many of you are there? I'm going to teach both of you a lesson. Ink dragons. She began inhaling, but was interrupted. That's enough. The Ink Dragon Slayer looked over to her companion only to see him on the ground, with another boy. This time a blue-haired one standing over him. He was holding the pointed end of a staff at the back of Papier's head. You're going to let us go, now, Gerard said. Despair filled Inchostro. What the fuck was going on? Was this forest filled with annoying brats? She let go of her breath. Fine. Naruto picked his sister in his hands, but before he turned to leave, he looked at the Ink Dragon Slayer. I was wondering. Who was the dragon that trained you? Inchostro was silent for a moment, before she answered, my father, the Ink Dragon, Atramentum Bella Tela. The blonde nodded. Is he all right? The girl narrowed her eyes at him. What do you mean? Be careful what you're going to say. She threatened, while ink started oozing slightly from her scales. Our mom, Sky Dragon Grandine, left us on the 7th of July, this year. She couldn't tell us where she was going or why, and we promised we would find her. Inchostro had frozen when she heard that. Worry immediately settled in her stomach, followed by fear. I haven't seen Dad in 2 months. I was going to visit him after this mission. Naruto saw her look and felt a bit bad. You know, maybe it was just our mom that had to go. Who knows, your dad is probably still where you last saw him at. When you meet him, could you ask him about our mom? You can tell me next time we meet, I'm sure there will be one. The Ink Dragon Slayer looked him in the eyes. What is your name? Naruto Marvel. Remember it, and let your guild master know I'm alive and I'll be looking for him. His little sister turned towards Inchostro, and I'm Wendy Marvel. The older girl nodded and looked at the blue-haired boy. Gerard, was all he said. She looked one last time at the now retreating blonde. Next time we meet, you won't get lucky and no one will interrupt our fight, short stuff. Naruto turned one last time towards her. Next time, I'm going to beat you, plank chest, and disappeared in the forest. Inchostro shifted her gaze at the other boy. Aren't you going to follow them? After a bit. I have to make sure you won't follow us. They remained like that for a while. The girl looked her partner in the eyes and saw him barely nod. She smiled at Gerard. You know, I think you should have run by now. Before Gerard could say anything, something pointy was pressed against his neck. Or rather several pointy things in the form of a claw. In front of him, the Ink Dragon Slayer dissolved into a puddle of ink. Game over. Inchostro whispered in his ear, only to see him smirk. The blue-haired boy turned into mist and dispersed. An illusion. What the fuck is up with these kids? They were quite impressive. Papier stood up with a small smile. Gerard managed to catch me in an illusion while I was watching your fight and sneaked behind me. I suspect the second illusion was probably created while you were talking with the Sky Dragon Slayers. They also took the scroll with the ritual. What? His partner yelled. She turned at the direction the blonde had run off to and wings sprouted from her back. She made one step stretching them and started falling over. Don't. Papier caught her in his arms and lifted her bridal style. You've exhausted too much of your magical power. And you can't fool me, that spiraling orb in the final roar hurt you pretty bad. You couldn't liquefy fast enough, because you were caught by surprise. Shut up. She said tiredly. Her tail and wings had dissolved and her scales were slowly disappearing, threatening to leave her completely exposed. My bottles are in the back pocket of my backpack. Nodding, Papier carried his exhausted partner to her tent and set her on her sleeping bag. He took out 2 big bottles, containing black liquid from her backpack and handed her one of them. She immediately opened it and started drinking. All Dragon Slayer recovered their magical power when they consumed their element. In her case, she drank ink, which immediately made her feel better. She quickly downed the second bottle afterwards, before standing up. Let's go get those brats. No, her partner stopped her. We don't know where they are headed and another battle would be too risky. Even if I joined, I'm not sure we'd be able to win. We still don't know the full extent of Gerard's abilities and that mist illusion looked like air magic. Considering his resemblance to Wendy, it would be safe to assume he was their brother as well, which only means he is also a Sky Dragon Slayer. We can't go against 3 mages of such caliber, who would need only air to recover. Something which is in abundance, while you just finished your last bottle of ink. He gave her a smile. We underestimated them and we paid for that. Rest now and we'll just go back in the pyramid and we'll make another copy. No big deal. Inchostro cursed. Fuck, next time, I'll make them pay for this. Naruto and Gerard were walking along a road. They had kept moving for the past 3 hours. They had run for the first half hour, trying to put as much distance as possible between them and the Nove Volpi members. The sun would begin setting down in an hour and soon, they would need to make a camp, which was something they didn't really want. They had hoped they would have reached a town by now, but luck was not on their side. For now, while there was still light, they would continue. Gerard looked over to Naruto. Wendy had fallen asleep while they were still running and hadn't woken since. The blue-haired boy had suggested they switched carrying her, but the blonde had refused, saying he would recover fast, thanks to his magic. Dragon Slayers were really amazing. So Gerard had just settled for carrying her small backpack. They hadn't had the chance to open the scroll yet, but the marked boy could tell Naruto was eager to do it. They hadn't spoken much during the past 3 hours, instead opting on focusing on their senses. However, Gerard decided it was safe enough to start. So, you owe me a story, he joked, smiling at the blonde. Naruto laughed briefly. Yachi yourself though, it's a crazy one. Bear with me until the end and I'll answer any questions you might have. Gerard just nodded and looked at the blonde intently. The cerulean-eyed boy took a deep breath. Remember when I told you the 9-tailed demon fox attacked the village on the night I was born? And the village leader sealed it away in a child. He was my father and I was the child. He sacrificed his life to make me a Jinchuriki. That's a person with a sealed-tailed beast within him. Naruto continued his story, telling him everything. Who his parents were and what happened on that night, his painful and lonely past in the elemental nations, how he was summoned to this world, how the fox was released, almost killing him, how Grandine had saved him and given him a second chance at life. When he finished, he turned to Gerard to see a bewildered expression on his face. The blue-haired boy had been surprised at first that Naruto was from another world as well, but that was only a brief moment. He was more shocked at the tough life he had initially. Now he understood his devotion to his sister, as well as his desire to find his mother. He wasn't sure what he wanted with the fox though, so he asked him. Naruto remained silent for a while after the question. I guess I want to talk to him. He is the only one in this world that knew my parents, so I'm curious what he thought of them. I'm also curious about the masked man and why he attacked. My parents didn't know him, but maybe the Kyuubi would. Do you want revenge for the death of your parents? Gerard asked. Naruto mused. No, not really. It was a long time ago and something like that wouldn't really bring them back. Besides, I like my life very much with my current family. And even though the fox dealt the final blow, my parents would have died anyway that night, so it wasn't really his fault. I doubt I would see the masked man in Earthland, so revenge would be really stupid. I want to know what the fox is planning. Even though he was controlled that night and was forced to attack the Hidden Leaf Village, he is still a demon. He might be plotting something sinister for this world, and if he is, I will stop him. Of course, I probably won't stand a chance against him as I am now, so I am going to get stronger for the moment until we meet. Gerard merely nodded. He had understood Naruto's life had been tough and probably even tougher decisions would come in the future. All he could do was be there for his friend. Said friend looked at him. You know, Gerard, you're taking this awfully well, for someone who just met a person from another world. The blue-haired boy laughed. Oh, I have a very interesting story about that myself. I will tell you when Wendy wakes up and we make. Gerard trailed off and stopped. Naruto looked at him quizzically and saw him turn towards the forest, saying, Anima, too. Confused, Naruto tasted the air. He could feel the air currents moving unnaturally. They had felt normal just a moment ago. Gerard, what's going on? The blue-haired boy just looked at him. Stay here with Wendy. I have to check something out, it might get too dangerous for the two of you. Naruto snorted. You know, I'm experiencing deja vu here, except. Yeah, our roles were reversed just a couple of hours ago. He chuckled. Come on, Gerard, We are friends, aren't we? Let me help you out this time. Gerard thought it over for a bit. He sighed in the end. The blonde was right. Fine. But if it gets too dangerous, promise me you and Wendy would leave me and run. Naruto snorted again. Yeah, right. Keep dreaming. Let's go now. The blue-haired boy shook his head. That was Naruto for you. He was grateful though. He felt a lot better with the Marvels with him. As if he didn't have to carry the burden all alone anymore. This way. The two boys started running through the forest again. After a bit, they reached a cliff, overlooking a huge crater. They looked in the air and saw an enormous swirling hole in the sky. Damn. Gerard cursed. I was too late. He took his staff and pointed it at the hole. Naruto could feel a gathering of magical energy around the wood, before it shot towards the hole, in the form of a bright ray of light. As it reached the sky, bolts of lightning shot from it, reaching the edges of the hole. After a brief struggle, it began closing, until the sky looked normal again. What was that? Asked a bewildered Naruto. Anima. Gerard simply stated. Seeing the questions in his friend's eyes, he continued. It is a dimensional gate, towards another universe, with a world very much similar to this one, called Edalus. Whoa. Was all that Naruto could say. Even though he was from another dimension himself, he couldn't help not being amazed at something so grand. His eyes caught something else in the distance though. Hey look. Doesn't that over there look like a village? The blonde screamed, pointing with his foot towards a multitude of houses in a faraway place. Gerard looked in that direction and spotted them as well. Looks like a 3 to 4 hour trip. We don't have that much though, the sun's going to set soon. No choice then. We'll use Vernier. His friend looked at him worriedly. Won't that exhaust you even further? The blonde just grinned. Don't worry about it, I've recovered some of my energy back in the last couple of hours. If it gets bad, I'll just stop the spell and we'll continue walking. Naruto received an uncertain nod from Gerard and chanted. Fast winds that run the heaven. Vernier. 4 wind bracelets appeared around each one of their ankles. Let's go. Naruto said, and the two boys started running at an incredible speed. Gerard realized if they kept moving like this, then they would be able to reach the village in 2 hours, 2.5 at most. The blonde had another question on his mind though. Hey, Gerard, how did you know about the anima? His friend sighed. Because, Naruto, I am from Edalus. The sun had set for some time, when the two boys reached the town. Both of them were quite winded and Naruto was at the point where he was taking huge and heavy breaths. The constant maintaining of Vernier had exhausted him quite a bit. He couldn't keep it on all the time, so at some points they would stop for a quick rest or just walk for a while, before resuming their run. Despite his protests, Gerard had convinced him to switch carrying Wendy. He had reasoned that Naruto was already getting tired enough from maintaining a spell while running at the same time, so he shouldn't be burdened by that at least. In fact, the blonde was actually grateful, since at some points his hands had started hurting. That was why Gerard was the one carrying Wendy at the time. The girl had actually woken up a few times during their journey, and that was the second part of their reason for stopping or just walking. They had decided it would be better if she was asleep while they were traveling, so they had taken the time to help her with that. Gerard had decided he should find a staff, capable of casting sleep magic. That could be very useful at times. Their little group had been quite lucky actually. No wild animals came in their way and the night was clear with a full moon and lots of stars to illuminate their journey. Had it not been like that, they would have been forced to camp somewhere and even worse, make a fire. They still wanted to keep a low profile after all, in case no Volpe came after them. They were happy to finally reach the village, so they could have some rest and food. However, the good mood immediately fell when they saw the state of the buildings. The whole town looked like it had been abandoned for quite a while. It wasn't that big of a town anyway, but to see it void of life was disheartening. The boys decided they should look around in case someone had been living here, or at least to search for proper beds. They went to the plaza and looked around. Gerard had said that this would probably be the best place to start from. This way they could also get some idea of the placement of T streets of the village. And he had been right. They immediately noticed a small house that looked as rundown as the rest of the town. The difference was light was coming out from one of its windows. The boys looked at each other and shared a brief nod. They went to the only bright building and Naruto stepped to the door and knocked, while Gerard stayed behind one of the corners, still holding Wendy. No response came and Naruto knocked on the door again, this time more insistently. After the third hit, the door opened. In front of him stood a small, slim, elderly man with a long white beard and big mustache. He had black eyes and large, furry, white eyebrows, which actually joined with his beard at the sideburns of his face. On his forehead he had a tattoo, consisting of a red dot, with two arched red stripes around it. On his head, he had an impressive feather headgear, made from white eagle feathers, with their tips painted red. Around his neck he had a large necklace, consisting of massive teeth, hanging over his bare chest. He wore light cloth, tied and circling around his waist, paired with loose dark pants reaching below his knees and simple black shoes. He had more lighter colored feathers adorning the back of his waist and wore two large golden bracelets over each biceps, with his forearms being bandaged. He looked at the blonde expectantly, without saying anything. His large bushy brows and serious face gave off the impression he was slightly frowning. Naruto gulped. Hi. Hello. The old man greeted. Both of them studied each other in the awkward silence that followed, before Naruto decided he should talk more. Well. My name is Naruto Marvel and I've been traveling with my family in the wilderness for the past month and a half, looking for a town. We finally found this village and noticed that this was the only place that had light coming from it and I was wondering if we could spend the night. The old man gave him a long calculating look, before he asked, and where might your family be? Naruto motioned to his left and waved Gerard over. The other boy came next to the blonde, still holding the sleeping Wendy. Hello, I'm Gerard. He greeted, receiving a nod from the old man. The bearded geezer looked at the two boys for a bit longer, before giving them a wide smile. Of course, come in. He moved to the side, making a way for the boys to enter through. They gave him a wide smile and Naruto exclaimed excitedly, Thanks a lot, old man. Gerard was a bit more polite. Thanks, mister. No problem, no problem. The bearded man waved them off. My name is Rubel. I should warn you, I don't have much to eat and the only drinks I have aren't suitable for children. That's all right, old man. We have brought our own food, we'd be happy to share it with you as well. A happy blonde gave him a huge grin. The house itself was as rundown on the inside as it was on the outside. It didn't bother the children that much though, as long as they would have a roof over their heads for tonight. There was even a small table with a couple of chairs in what looked like a living room. But the biggest treat was the fireplace. The boys started settling, leaving their bags on the floor near the walls and putting a still sleeping Wendy on a blanket. She still hadn't recovered completely from the battle. After all, she was barely 6 and Sky Dragon's magic was very tiring. After that, the boys had begun unpacking and setting the table. They cleaned and lit up the fireplace and cleared some of the rubble and dirt from the room. When the room had reached a liking level of good enough, they decided it was time to wake up Wendy and eat. In the meantime, Rubel had gone to take some of his sake and was quite pleasantly surprised at the state of the room when he came back. He saw the blonde going over to the little girl. Wendy. He shook her. Wake up, it's dinner time. The girl groggily opened her eyes and yawned. She stood up and hugged her brother before she looked around. Where are we, Naru-ni-chan? We've reached the village and we're at the house of this nice old man. Naruto motioned. His name is Rubel. Rubel, meet my cute little sister, Wendy. The girl hid a blush behind her brother and gave the old man a shy smile. Hello. Rubel returned a wider smile. Hello there, little lady. I have to say, your brother is right. You are very cute. That made Wendy blush even more, but she still gave him a huge grin. Now, let's eat. Naruto happily yelled and sat on the table. They began having dinner. It wasn't much, just whatever leftovers the three children had from the deer meat and some vegetables and fruits. But it was more than enough for them. Rubel had eaten a bit with them, but had opted to drink sake more. They made small conversation, where the children told him about their predicament. He was surprised to learn dragons actually existed and that there were 2 powerful dragon slayers in his home. Gerard hadn't said too much, only that he was without parents. The old man was quite surprised when he learned that he wasn't in fact related to the Marvels. He and the girl looked so much alike after all. On the other hand, when Wendy got out of her shy demeanor, Rubel immediately saw she had the same personality as her older brother. He had also learnt they had some sort of skirmish with another guild and were now looking for a guild themselves. But while they were talking, the old man noticed the two boys were eager to talk about something and would wait for him to leave to do so, no matter how late it got. So Rubel excused himself and told him they could sleep in the living room, since he only had one more room in the house and it was his. In truth, he wouldn't normally sleep there, but he wanted to give the children some privacy. After the old man had left, Naruto looked expectantly at Gerard. He had decided not to ask too many questions until they reached the village, since they had a more important task at hand. His friend had said Wendy should be awake too, so she would get to hear the story as well. In truth, Naruto was actually burning from curiosity and it had probably showed in his eyes, since Gerard let out a chuckle. All right. Let me start from the beginning, since Wendy was asleep. He told the little girl about the hole in the sky and how he had closed it. That was the anima. It is a dimensional gate, linking this world, Earthland, to another, Edalus. Unlike this universe, Edalus doesn't have an infinite amount of magic. It had actually been severely diminished in the past several years. The people there don't have a natural talent for magic or any amount of it in them for that matter. Mages still existed, but they would be people that utilized magical weapons. The population had become increasingly desperate for magical power since the society was quite reliant on it, and so a solution was found. The anima was created and the king of a certain kingdom would use it to steal magical power from this world. At first, everything was going all right. The people were happy they could still somehow obtain magic and carry on with their lives. But the king changed. He became increasingly drunk with the power and started conquering other kingdoms to gather their magical energies as well. In the end, there was one kingdom left, now known simply as the Kingdom of Edalus. But that wasn't enough for the king. He would start concentrating all the magical power he gathered into the capital, where it would be all to himself. He didn't care that much about the people anymore, just about the magic. So he started using the anima more and more to steal it from this world. Earthland had an infinite amount, they wouldn't miss it. He reasoned and the people would listen. But the more he gathered, the more he desired, until the kind king was completely gone, replaced by a power-hungry maniac. Here Gerard paused, with clear sadness in his eyes. He looked at the table for some time, while the Marvels were absorbing the story they had just heard. The blue hair renewed. His son, the Prince of Edalus, disagreed with his father's methods. He had seen and experienced the changes in the kind man he so loved and was deeply hurt by the insane man that had replaced him. Realizing his father would never stop using the anima, no matter how much power he gathered, he decided it was time to act, in hopes of not only saving and returning the kind old king, but also saving Edalus from an inevitable disaster that would be most likely caused by its power-hungry ruler. The name of the king is Faust and his son was called. He paused a bit, before looking up from the table and continuing. Gerard. A surprised gasp escaped from the Marvels. But the now revealed prince didn't give them a chance to say anything. I traveled to this world, using the anima, in hopes of closing it from this side whenever it appeared. Even though I don't have magical power of my own, I am very skilled with magical weapons and staves. This way, I would stop my father's supply of magical energy and perhaps the kind king from before would realize the wrongs he was committing. Gerard looked pointedly at Naruto. That's why I didn't want you to come with me. If you were trapped in the anima, you could have been transported to Edalus. And from what I know, any magical energy that comes from this world is turned into a lacrima crystal. He paused a bit, preparing himself for what he was about to say. That's why I think we should separate and I should travel on my own. It would be too dangerous for you and your sister to be with me. If you end up being Ed and turned into a lacrima crystal, I don't think there would be anything I could do to save you from my father. He barely finished the sentence, before he was tackled by a crying Wendy, making the both of them fall from it onto the ground. No, she screamed and held him tightly. You are as stupid as Naru-ni-chan. Gerard felt he was in trouble. But Wendy. This time though, Naruto didn't come to his aid, quite the opposite actually. She's right, Gerard. How can you expect us to leave you now, that you've told us the importance of your mission as well as the danger behind it? The same way you helped me face against No Volpe, now let us help you in overcoming this task. You said it yourself, we are friends, right? Even though we've known each other for so little, I even consider you a part of our family now. I can't let my older brother deal with something this difficult by himself. I am not letting you go. was all that Wendy said. Naruto continued though. It seems my sister agrees with me. He chuckled, and besides, you promised you would help me with no Volpe. We still don't know what's in that scroll. For all we know, the stupid fox could have plans for world domination. Hey, it might even decide to expand them to your world as well. Everyone laughed at his joke. The atmosphere had lightened up now and Gerard decided to agree. You were right. It was stupid of me. I think I caught it from you. Hey. Both Gerard and Wendy laughed at the blonde's outburst. The blue-haired boy continued. Let's get some sleep for now. Tomorrow morning we should open the scroll and see what it contains. I also think we should stay here for a while, if Rubel lets us. We've been traveling in the forest for a long time and it would be better if we had some rest. After that we can continue with our search for a guild. All right. Both the Marvels exclaimed happily. Before Gerard could get up though, he was punched lightly in the gut by Wendy. He looked at her surprised only to receive a kiss on the cheek. Don't ever say you'll leave me again. Promise. Gerard just smiled. I promise, Wendy. The little girl nodded and let him go. She stood up, went to her brother and hugged him as well. You too, Naru-ni-chan. Naruto laughed. Of course, Wendy, I promise. And you know I never go back on my world. We'll find Mom together, won't we? She smiled at him. Nine Tails as well. And we'll stop Faust too. Everyone laughed at their newfound resolve. Let's get to bed now, Naruto said, and they all lied down in their sleeping bags. Tonight, Wendy had insisted they would sleep close to Gerard, with her between the two boys. After all, she wasn't going to let them go, ever. After everyone had gone to sleep, one of the corners got distorted, until it revealed a lost-in-thought Rubel. Such interesting children. Perhaps he had found those who would help him in his quest. He could feel the power and charisma emanating from them, even Gerard. Despite the boy not having any magical power, he had no doubt they would become very important people in the future. Indeed, fate have given him a great gift. Now he needed to find a way to convince them to stay here. Humming in though, Rubel left the sleeping children and went to the other room. On the next morning, Naruto, Wendy and Gerard were preparing to open the scroll in the living room. Rubel was sitting at the table, drinking his sake and observing the three children. They had noticed, no matter how much alcohol the old geezer drank, he would never get even tipsy. It didn't affect him in the slightest. Maybe that was why he would drink it from the morning. Naruto looked at the other two, who just nodded at him and opened the scroll. What followed was not expected by anyone. Ah! The scream was heard throughout the empty town. Really now, brats. You should be more careful when you are opening things without knowing what they are containing. Rubel was scolding them, while using telekinesis magic to roll in the now enormous piece of paper. The moment Naruto had opened the scroll, it had expanded rapidly and covered everything in the room. It actually made for an extremely comical situation, if you were the one observing it, that is. Whoa, old man, that's amazing. You are a mage? Naruto asked in astonishment. Of course, I am actually a very powerful mage. He finished with the rolling and started moving the giant scroll towards the window. Open the window, Naruto, and let us go outside. There will be more space there and we can finally see what this is about. After a minute, everyone was outside and Rubel had stretched the giant piece of paper on the ground. He had frozen at what he was seeing though. I don't understand anything that's on this thing. Naruto scratched his chin in thought. How about you, Gerard? Not a clue. His friend shook his head. Brats. Rubel said in a serious tone. Where did you get this? Naruto turned a curious look at him. You know what it says, old man? Yeah, it's written in an ancient language called Nervit. Now answer me. Well, remember when we told you we fought with a guild, no Volpe? Rubel just nodded. The blonde continued. We found them coming out from the ruins of an ancient pyramid, carrying this. It's the reason we fought with them. The old man trailed in thought. Why was it important to you? You had no idea what the scroll contained. Naruto shook his head. It was because of the guild they belonged in. Rubel lifted a furry eyebrow. What's so special about it? The three children looked at him with a calculating look and then at each other worriedly. Oh come on, brats. You have nothing to worry about. I'm just an old mage that has chosen a life of solitude. No one comes by here often, and even if they do, They never stay for long. Whatever it is, your secret would be safe with me. Naruto let out a sigh. Rubal had been very nice and hospitable to them, and in a way he kind of reminded him of the old man Hokage from the elemental nations. We should sit down, it's a long story. So, Rubal said, while scratching his beard, not paying attention in the slightest to the sake spilling from his mouth. He had somehow neglected to swallow it properly. Let me get this straight. 2 of you are dragon slayers, 1 of you is a prince on a mission to stop his father, 2 of you are from a different world, and you. He pointed at the blonde. Used to be the container of a powerful demon, called the 9-tailed demon fox, who is now has formed his own guild. The children looked at him in shock. They hadn't told him anything about Gerard. Oh, don't give me that look. Last night, I accidentally cast an illusion and heard your conversation. I'm an old hermit and it's been getting really boring lately. Plus I was curious. He was pierced by 3 glares. I told you, don't worry, your secrets are safe with me. Naruto shook his head and sighed. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, you forgot, next time I see the Ink Dragon Slayer, I'm going to beat her. Rubal just chuckled at the blonde. Well, from what I've read from that scroll, it actually depicts a ritual of summoning a demon. Naruto immediately jumped to his feet. What, why would Kyuubi need something like that? Who knows? Gerard was the one that answered. But it's clear, we can't just let him be, at least until we learn more about his intentions. That's right. Wendy joined in. Maybe we should look for a guild right now. That won't do. Rubal interrupted the children. I'm not sure if you know that, but it is forbidden for 2 guilds to fight each other, by the council. Actually. What type of guild is no Volpe? A light or a dark one? Inchostro said it was neither. They're an independent guild, meaning they don't answer to a magic council, but at the same time they don't oppose one. Naruto explained. Well then, here are your options. You can't join a light guild, since it is forbidden for them to fight other guilds in order to maintain peace and stability. Magic can be very dangerous sometimes and could even alter reality in a disastrous way. Even to fight against a dark guild, you would need permission. So in order to fight with another guild, even if it is an independent one, you would need to join a dark guild. All the children immediately grimaced and started shaking their heads. That's what I thought. The old man continued. In this case, you need to find an independent guild and join it. Unfortunately, there aren't many of those. Truthfully, this is the first I heard of one in many years. So I can't really help you with that. The children looked dejectedly at the ground after hearing his words. Rubal smiled though. Well, there is another way. You can create your own independent guild. In that case, if you fought with another independent guild, the Magic Council can't directly do anything about it, unless there were bystanders hurt. Of course, you would still need a powerful mage as a guild master, in order to offer you some kind of leverage and protection. I can feel you kids are strong and have great potential, but are still quite young. But where are we going to find a powerful mage to be our guild master? Naruto asked, tilting his head to the right, with Wendy repeating his motion. Rubal laughed. Well, you kids are in luck. How about I become your guild master? As I've said, I am a powerful mage. Plus I know several ancient languages, so in case no Volpe goes after ancient rituals and you recover them, I could decipher them, so we would get a better idea of what Nine Tails is doing. And I can't really stand by and do nothing, when you children have such important tasks to do. Said children shared a look between each other. It was amazing, after such a short amount of time, Gerard and the Marvels could understand each other with just a look. Everyone nodded slightly, before both Naruto and Wendy jumped and grabbed Rubal in a hug. That's great, old man, thank you, they both shouted, while still suffocating the poor old man. After Gerard pointed out they would be left without a guild master if they didn't let go, Naruto decided to ask. So, what are we going to call ourselves? The 9-tailed demon fox was listening intently to Inchostro and Papierre's report of their mission. They had managed to bring back a scroll with a copy of the ritual, but had apparently encountered some trouble. Kyuubi covered his eyes with a paw and shook his head. Out of everyone in Earthland, they had managed to come across the one person he didn't want to find out about his plans. What's more, apparently that same person now had a copy of the ritual himself so he could figure out what was going on. This was without a doubt some sick joke courtesy of fate. No one else would have recognized that guild mark. But it had to be Naruto. After the initial annoyance, the fox smiled slightly. So the boy had managed to survive, and he had a family too. Inchostro just came to the part where Naruto had said he'd be looking for him. Ninetales couldn't keep himself from letting out a chuckle. Oh yeah, the boy was going to be a pain in the ass in the years to come. Especially since he had the same personality as Kushina. Not to mention, he was also apparently a dragon slayer and had a family of dragon slayers as well. They sounded quite good as well, to be able to hold their own like that against his guild. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Judging by the way Inchostro spoke about him, there would be many more fights between them in the future. Things would certainly get interesting. The Kyuubi wasn't that worried about Naruto finding him. Even if he did, the fox doubted he would be powerful enough to stop him. Plus, Ninetales was eternal, he would make his plans come true eventually. Honestly, he would have been a bit worried if things had gotten too easy. If life becomes like that, it usually meant trouble. Now, he would have some sort of entertainment. The last 7 years had been quite boring, especially since his yin chakra hadn't been recovered fully. Apparently, it took a long time to travel through dimensions. No matter though, in a few mods he would have it all back and he wouldn't need to worry about the dragons that much anymore. Especially since this new information about Grandine leaving on the 7th of July. What should we do about him, Master? It was Leonard that asked him. The fox hummed. Nothing. Naruto is of no consequence. Things would be boring if they went too easy anyway. And ominous too. The fox trailed off, before he continued. If he becomes too much of a pain and is stupid enough to challenge me, I will dispose of him myself. Otherwise, we will continue with our plans. The rest nodded. Yes, Master. Leonard wasn't too pleased with his decision though. He wouldn't mind if things went easy for once, but that was one of his guild master's quirks. Now leave me, I'm going to take a nap, Ninetales ordered. Inchostro snorted. Lazy ass fox. She couldn't keep her smile though, she would have her chance for a rematch. And next time, no one would interrupt them. First, she needed to check on her father though. She hadn't been able to sleep at all, since Naruto had told her what happened to his mother. She had even made Papier fly faster, to keep up with her. Strangely, her partner had apparently sensed her discomfort and hadn't made any comment about it. She took in her scale form and immediately sprouted her wings and tail. The Ink Dragon Slayer waved quickly to Papier and Leonard and took flight. You better be there, Dad, Inchostro whispered, with a heavy feeling in her heart. Wendy sat on top of a cliff, overlooking a road that led to their village. It had been 1 year since they had decided to form their guild. They still haven't chosen a name for it, because her Naru Ni-chan insisted it had to be something badass and cool like Inchostro's guild. He was adamant he would never lose to that flat chest or the stupid fox. Even in guild names. Wendy giggled a bit. Her brother had faced the Ink Dragon Slayer once more after their last meeting a year ago and the resulting battle had actually changed the landscape a bit. It was a good thing they haven't chosen a name or a guild mark yet. That's what Rubel had explained at least. He had said they should still keep a low profile, until they get stronger. If any more battles like that occurred and the Magic Council of Fury could place names behind it, it might choose to take action. The battle itself was fought far away from any civilization, at some old ruins again. So it had actually taken some time for people to notice the change in terrain. Naruto and Gerard had been looking for an anima to conduct some experiments, before properly closing it and of course, Wendy had tagged along. So they had witnessed their fight, which ended in a draw eventually, picked up Naruto and had left. They had also returned later on to try and find out what Nove Volpe had been looking for there, since this time they weren't as lucky and couldn't retrieve the scroll they were carrying. Wendy frowned when she noticed the sun was setting down. Today was the 6th of July, year 778 and tomorrow they were supposed to return to their old home and spend the day there. In case Grandine had decided to return. But Gerard had sensed an anima and had gone to close it quickly and Naruto had gone off on a searching trip, so she was left alone with Rubel. She liked the old man a lot, but when the boys left sometimes, she would get lonely with just him. And they had both been missing for more than a month, Naru Ni-chan for 2 even. It was the battle with Inchostro that had caused him to leave. After they had retreated, he had said that the Ink Dragon Slayer dominated the battle and he was barely able to keep up with her. The only reason he got a draw was because he could replenish his magical energy in an easier way than her. but Naruto had been certain she would find a way around that. He had also said that she had used rune magic in the fight, which was what gave her the edge, so he had gone on a trip to search for a rune master. He had to create his father's technique after all as well. And he considered that area of magic to be one more thing in their intense rivalry. Nevertheless, he had promised he'd be back by tomorrow. Both of them had. They were all going to go to their old house together, even with Rubel. Wendy let out a sigh and blinked, the tears threatening to fall from her eyes away. Stupid Ni-chan. Stupid Gerard. She stood up and started making her way towards her home. While she was walking though, the final rays of sunlight shone over something that caught her attention. She walked towards it and discovered a giant white egg with many silver markings outlined on it. Wonder what this is? Wendy tried to lift it and found it was a bit heavy. Hey, wait a minute. Dragons hatched from eggs, right? And this one was unnaturally big and heavy. Maybe it was a dragon egg. Wait, since it had silver marking, it could be one of Grandine's eggs. Letting out a happy squeal at the prospect of another sibling which she could spend time with, she carefully started walking home. Shit. Naruto was in trouble. He was running at full speed with Vernier, but he would still be late. He winced when he imagined a sad and crying Wendy. He immediately tried to double his speed. He would be home by the morning, no matter what. He was moving too fast to notice where he was stepping, causing him to trip on something, start rolling on the ground, while still maintaining great speed, before finally hitting a tree causing it to break. After a while, a grunt was heard. Sky Dragon's healing palm. Blue energy surrounded Naruto's hands and he went over his battered body with them. After he took care of his injuries, he stood up and cursed. What the fuck? He went over to the offending object and saw it was a half-buried giant white egg. He lifted his eyebrows in curiosity and started digging it out. Whoa, I've never seen an egg this big, Naruto exclaimed as he traced over the black markings of the egg with his fingers. Hey, maybe it's a dragon's egg. He screamed and tried to lift it. It wasn't that heavy. He could carry it home. Home? Shit. He was running late. He hoped the egg would appease his sister enough. Fast winds that run the heaven. Vernier. Two small cyclones formed around Naruto's ankles and he immediately started running again, this time, carrying a giant egg with him. Wendy woke up with the smell of ramen filling her nose. Ramen? That meant Naru Ni-chan was back. Every time he would go on a trip, he would prepare ramen for breakfast on the day he was back. That meant they would still be able to go to their clearing. Wendy stood up from her bed and picked up the egg. Since she was feeling lonely and she had also read that eggs needed to be kept warm, she slept with it last night. Wait until Naru Ni-chan sees it. She rushed downstairs to the living room and saw a sleepy Gerard and Rubel talking happily with Naruto, who was currently busy finishing with the cooking. After they had decided they would live here, they had moved into a bigger house. Naruto and Gerard had plans to build a guild house soon though, so they would be moving into a new home when they did. Seeing both her brother and Gerard back and talking with Rubel, her whole family together at one place, made Wendy extremely happy. She put the egg on the ground carefully, before she rushed towards her blonde. Naru Ni-chan. She grabbed him in a crushing hug. You made me worry, I thought you wouldn't be back for today. Naruto laughed, while he returned the hug and patted his little sister on the head. I promised I'd be back, right? And I never go back on my word. Wendy let him go and kissed him on the cheek. Right. So how was your trip, Naru Ni-chan? Wendy said, while going over to Gerard to hug and kiss him as well. The blue-haired boy was a bit startled, since he had fallen asleep during the exchange. Great. I found a teacher for rune magic. The blonde smiled, but I'll tell you all about it later. I have a surprise for you. Me too. Screamed Wendy and ran over to her egg. When she picked it and turned back, she almost dropped it in surprise, when she saw her brother was holding another egg with the same markings, but this time they were colored in black. Naruto lifted his eyebrows. You found one too, Wendy? Yeah. She nodded. It's Grandine's egg. She smiled happily as she brought it over to the table. You know, I'm certain I've seen these before somewhere. Gerard barely suppressed a yawn. I can't figure out where though. That's because you traveled the whole night and just came back home. You should sleep, brother. Naruto turned to the blue-haired boy. In the past year, their friendship had only strengthened and they considered themselves real family now. Gerard nodded. Yeah, I should. But we don't really have that much time. We'll be going to your old home after breakfast, right? I just might rest a bit there. Everyone nodded, before Naruto said, "All right, breakfast is ready. Let's eat." They started setting the table, but were suddenly interrupted by a loud crack. They turned their heads and noticed in shock the eggs had began moving and cracking. All of them gathered around in anticipation. The first one to crack open was the black one. From inside came out a black kitten with a dark green belly. It had narrow brown eyes, but its most distinguishable feature were his ears. They had fur around them, in a spiky shape, looking a lot like the leaves of a pineapple. The kitten gave them a lazy look, before it muttered, "Troublesome," and fell asleep after a brief yawn. "It can talk," Naruto, Wendy and Rubel shouted, pointing at the kitten. It opened its eye briefly to look at their shocked expressions, before it grunted and went back to sleep. "You know, you remind me of someone from my old world," Naruto said, cupping his cheek in thought. "You kind of even look like him." He went over to the black kitten and picked it up. It opened its eyes and gave him an irritated look. "Oh yeah, definitely. I think I'm going to name you Shikamaru. Or Shika for short." The kitten looked pleased at that, before it yawned and closed its eyes again, finally being left to sleep in peace by the troublesome loud people. "Hey," Gerard said, "I remember now. Those are." He was interrupted by the second egg cracking, to reveal a white kitten. When she saw it, Wendy squealed. "Ah, look, it's so cute." But the kitten only responded with a faraway look. "Can we keep it, please?" She turned her HOR brother. "Those are Exceed," Gerard was finally able to say. Everyone turned to him, as he continued. "Those are the only beings in my world, having natural magical power. They are regarded as gods and also have the ability to fly." "Wait. You said the sky was green in Edalus, right?" Wendy asked. After Gerard nodded, she continued. "And you have flying cats?" "Ha, I win, Naru-ni-chan." "Damn," muttered Naruto dejectedly. Both Gerard and Rubel shook their heads. Sometimes those two would lose focus of the important things. Wendy, for her part, went to the white kitten and hugged it. "I think I'll call you Charles." "This is so strange. What are Exceed doing here?" Gerard wondered, having a bad feeling about it. "And what are we going to do about them? We can't leave them without a shelter." Naruto had regained his focus. Wendy suddenly got an idea. "I know. We should keep them as a part of our guild. You said they possessed magical power and had the ability to fly, right?" She turned towards Gerard, who nodded. "Then they can become mages and our guildmates. I also thought of a name for our guild." Everyone looked at her expectantly, including Shikamaru and Charles. "Cage Shelter," Wendy exclaimed, giving them a huge grin. Rubel and Gerard nodded, apparently satisfied with the name as well. Everyone looked towards Naruto, who was holding his chin in thought. "Cage Shelter, huh?" he finally said. "Kates versus Volpe. I like it." Ursa Scarlet was very much displeased. In fact, her displeasure had started bordering annoyance, ever since she boarded the train to Nebula Town. Her day had not started well. First, she had missed the train from Magnolia, because of one of Natsu and Gray's regular friendly bouts. Sometimes she couldn't understand how two best friends could fight so much, but then again she and Mira used to fight all the time in the past and now they were quite close. Normally one of the boys' little fights wouldn't have taken her a lot of time to deal with. She would just scold them a bit and they would immediately make up. This time was different though, because the whole guild had gotten involved to the point of a full-blown brawl. What was worse, they had ignored her words of reason, and since she was already running a bit late, she had no choice but to get serious. In retrospect, Ursa had realized that it might have been hard to listen to someone's pleas for order while you were being hit by a chair. Still, that was no excuse for her guildmates' improper behavior, especially since it was destroying valuable guild property. After she was done administering punishment, she had taken off for the train station. Of course there was a little extra for Natsu, for having the audacity to say she did more damage to the guild than everyone else combined. Sometimes Ursa wondered if her guild knew of all the trouble they put her through. The assignment she had accepted would take her quite some time to complete. Not because it was hard, rather it would take her a long time to reach the town it was at and then come back. Since it was going to be a rather lengthy journey with 2 days spent on a train, she had wanted to leave early to get a sleeping compartment. However, because of her delay at the guild, She had missed the train from Magnolia to Onibus. She would need to take a train from there to Nebula, where her assignment lay. If she were to wait for the next train to Onibus, she would have missed the one to Nebula, and since it was a long distance, there was only one train per day. So Urza had been forced to rent a magical four-wheeled vehicle and drive it at full speed, which had been quite taxing. After all, it required the driver's magical energy to run, and even though Urza had vast quantities of magical power, befitting a S-class mage of her stature, the distance to Onibus was long, and when she did finally reach the town's train station, she had become a bit winded. Unfortunately, her bad streak hadn't ended there. Even though she would have been able to catch the train to Nebula, there were no more free single sleeping compartments or even double ones. So Urza had to settle for a first-class cabin. And here she was now, looking for an empty one, since she wasn't really keen on the idea of sharing during the night with a complete stranger. It wasn't that she was afraid someone might try something while she was sleeping. More so, it would be quite annoying to explain the disappearance of such individual, and the blood splatter all over the cabin were not related in the slightest. Alas, her efforts to find a solitary compartment would be in vain. Urza could not believe there were so many people traveling on this train. In fact, this was her first time with a completely packed one. Then again, considering there was only one each day, it shouldn't be that surprising. Nevertheless, if it turned out the first-class cabins were actually full as well, even though she had paid for one, there would be a very unhappy staff on this train. With a sigh, she reached the final compartment, only to be pleasantly surprised that there was space in it. Her joy was short-lived though, since she noticed the other occupant was from the male gender and apparently had two cats with him. The young man, she supposed, was lying down on the left seats and was seemingly sleeping. Urza wasn't sure if he indeed was a young man, since his face was covered by an orange book and she could only see he had spiky golden hair. The two cats on the other hand looked quite similar to Happy, Natsu's partner. A black one was sleeping on the blonde's stomach, while a white one was sitting on the other side holding a pencil and looking quite absorbed in writing something in some kind of notepad. Urza let out another sigh. Well, this shouldn't be that bad really. The whole scene looked quite serene compared to her rowdy guild. After all the annoying things that happened today, she definitely needed serene right now. She hoped the young man would be a gentleman and would not try anything weird during the night. For his own good. Putting on a serious expression, Urza opened the door to the cabin, earning the attention of the only non-sleeping occupant in it. The white cat immediately looked her over and with a strange smile and a glint in its eyes, that made the girl a bit uneasy, said, "Why, hello there." "Hello." Urza greeted, as she entered the compartment and closed the door behind her. She wasn't actually that surprised that the cat was able to speak. That only reaffirmed her initial suspicions, that it was similar to Natsu's partner. The cat kept smiling. "Oh please, take a seat," it said, patting the space right next to it with its left paw. Urza studied it for a moment and sat at a respectful distance, without saying anything, and just placed her handbag next to her. That was the beauty of the first-class compartments. Even though they weren't sleeping ones, the seating was so large it could actually be considered as two big couches on opposite ends, with enough space to actually sleep on them, like the blonde was currently doing. Brief silence fell, before it was interrupted by the white feline, which apparently had other plans, that did not include being quiet and minding its own business. It was slowly approaching Urza, while saying, "So, what does a beautiful lady like you doing traveling alone on such a long and tedious trip? Perhaps some company would make it less boring?" It finished, with a suggestive smile. Urza turned to the creepy cat and looked it over. It had white fur with a green belly and chest. The fur around his head had a spiky look, giving the impression the cat actually had a mane. There were two red lines running down its cheeks, that started from its black eyes, and Urza also noticed it had a wart on the right side of its nose. What surprised her more was the clothing actually. The cat was wearing a long red coat with two yellow circles at its shoulders and shockingly, two small, red, wooden Geta sandals on its feet. Apparently, the cat had continued inching its way towards her while she was looking over its appearance, giving it one of her looks. Which to her pleasure immediately took effect. The cat stopped its advance and an uneasy expression replaced its grin. It backed up a bit. "On the other hand, maybe a respectful lady like you would prefer some peace and quiet." Urza said nothing and continued fixing it with her eyes. "Yeah, I think I'm going to go sit at the windowsill and continue writing." Urza repeated herself. The cat chuckled nervously, while backing up. Normally, he would be all over such a beautiful girl, but the look she was giving him really put him on edge. He didn't risk turning his back completely either and just picked his notepad and sat at the window. Satisfied with the cat's decision, Urza suddenly felt she was being watched by someone else. She turned towards the sleeping blonde and noticed the black cat had opened one of its brown eyes and was focusing on her. They engaged in a staring contest, which lasted quite a bit. In the end, the feline just closed its eye, muttering something Urza wasn't able to catch, and went back to sleep. Satisfied, the girl leaned in her seat. Those two cats were definitely weird, especially the white one, but then she remembered Happy had his quirks as well. She briefly wondered if the one they were traveling with was some kind of weirdo or had annoying quirks as well. She really hoped for at least a peaceful journey before a hard mission. Having nothing better to do at the moment, she decided to study the blonde. He was a tall, young man, who wore a black tracksuit jacket with two dark green bands tied right above the elbows. He had white scaly fingerless gloves on his hands, which somewhat reminded her of Natsu's scarf, and a pair of white baggy pants with large pockets, from where Urza could see what looked like orange handles with rings at the ends sticking out. The leggings went into a pair of black open-tipped sandals, but the most noticeable piece of his attire was the long orange cloak. It had black wing motifs at the edges as well as at the hem of the short sleeves. At the chest, Urza noticed, the coat didn't have a zipper or buttons, but instead was held together by a red string. Moving further up, she still couldn't see the young man's face, because of the orange book, but this time she noticed he had an orange headband tied over his forehead, with a metal plate that had a symbol etched on it. She couldn't make out its entirety, since blonde locks were covering some parts of it. He must really be fond of the orange color. Urza mused as her gaze fell back to his face. She wondered what it looked like under that book, which she realized was from the Icha Icha series. Her eyes narrowed a bit at that. That series consisted of books filled with inappropriate and at times very perverted scenes. Levi had lent her all of them in the past, and although she would never admit it to the world, Urza actually enjoyed reading them, even though the story was a bit dry. That was exactly the point though. While she didn't mind what people read in private, displaying such a book in public could hardly be considered appropriate behavior. She would have words with the blonde when he woke up. Speaking of said blonde, Urza realized something had changed while she was busy with her inner thoughts. The book had fallen down a bit, to reveal a pair of bright cerulean eyes, which were looking into her own with curiosity. That is when Urza realized she had been absent-mindedly staring into them for a while now. Startled, she averted her gaze, which made her silently curse. Breaking off from a staring contest usually meant you were weak-willed, even if it was a coincidental one. And Urza Scarlet was certainly not weak. She put on a serious look and sought the blonde's eyes again, only to find out he had lifted himself and was now sitting in front of her, giving her a huge grin. "Hey, how are you doing?" The young man waved at her, not letting go of his bright smile. Now after seeing his face, she could tell he was a young man, probably around her age. What caught her attention even more were what looked like 3 whisker marks on each cheek, right below his beautiful cerulean orbs. Before Urza could mouth off a response, the black cat, that was now on the blonde's lap, spoke. "Naruto. Watch it, I almost fell." The young man, now identified as Naruto, looked down. "Oh, sorry about that, Shika. Here, let me put you on the seat." And he picked up the feline and placed it next to him, where it closed its eyes after muttering something again. "Naruto, you're finally awake." This time it was his other companion that spoke. "So, what did you think of my book? Did you like it?" The blonde turned towards it. It was kind of boring. I mean, sure the scenes were okay, but the story made me sleepy. You can't just put sex scene after sex scene. After a while I got tired of it. It needs more filling, more excitement." The cat looked away. "HMPF, someone like you can't understand the finer points of my art." Naruto just rolled his eyes. "Fine, if you don't believe me, let's ask someone else." He turned towards Urza. "Excuse me, miss, have you read this before?" He lifted the book to show her the cover. Caught completely off guard, Urza's eyes widened and her jaw fell slightly. She did her best not to blush, but to no avail. "She has." The white cat answered for her, giving a knowing, perverted grin. "Good," Naruto exclaimed, apparently oblivious to Urza's embarrassment. "So what did you think of it? Did you like the story?" The girl quickly composed herself, and before any conscious thought could register, she answered. Well, I have to agree, the story was dry and boring at times. And then her brain processed what she had just said, making her slap her hand over her mouth. What was she doing? How could she discuss such a perverted book with strangers she hadn't met for more than 5 minutes even? That was certainly not proper behavior for someone like her. There was something about the blonde. How did he manage to pull her in like that? Unaware of the inner battle going in Urza's mind, Naruto continued. See? I told you. Sure, you're selling a lot of them now, but if you continue with the same things, it will get boring pretty soon and only perverts would keep buying it. If you focus on the story though, I think your readership would even increase. You make it sound like it's easy. How can I make it more interesting? Why not make it an adventure story? Everyone likes battles. Don't you dare use me as inspiration again though. The cat just huffed and started writing again, muttering, mist gun it is. Naruto turned towards her and apparently finally realized it wasn't really polite to ask a complete stranger, a beautiful girl at that, about her opinion on a perverted book. It could be considered very weird and creepy actually. He scratched the back of his head while giving her a nervous smile. Hee hee. Sorry about that. I have a tendency to get a little overexcited about things sometimes. The black cat known as Shika snorted at his words, without even opening an eye. The blonde either didn't hear it or decided to outright ignore it, since he continued. It wasn't very appropriate and I didn't mean to make you uneasy, especially since we just met and aren't even friends yet. Urza nodded and gave him a serious look. You were right, it was inappropriate to start discussing something like that, considering I don't even know who you are. Oh, then let me introduce myself. The nervous smile was immediately replaced by an excited one. My name is Naruto Marvel. I am 18 years old and my birthday is on the 10th of October. My likes are ramen. 1. My family and my guild. My dislikes are waiting for the time it takes to prepare ramen, dark guilds and no Volpi. My hobbies are training, doing tough assignments and spending time with my family. My dreams for the future are to find my mother, Sky Dragon Grandine, as well as a certain demon. Urza had been quite shocked since the beginning of his introduction. That was Naruto Marvel? Your guild? Which one is it? She asked him, looking him directly in the eyes. Tennessee, and he pointed at his forehead. Cage Shelter, and indeed, this time Urza was able to recognize the symbol etched on the metal plate. It was a sitting cat, with an open left eye. Behind it, its tail was bent in a half circle, joining in the middle with another one, which represented a crescent moon. The guild mark of Cage Shelter, one of the 2 most popular independent guilds in the Fury Kingdom. And in front of her sat none other than its most well-known member, Cage Shelter's Orange Flash. Judging by his introduction, the rumors about him were true. He was probably one of the Sky Dragon Slayers. Cage Shelter's 3 dragons or Cage Shelter's 3 marvels is what they were called. Nothing was known about the other 2 though. In fact, very little was known about the mysterious guild in general. From what she had heard, Urza adduced at least some of the rumors were true. Like the one about the rivalry with the other big independent guild, No Volpi, which was quite mysterious in its own right. In fact, so little was known about either guild, that many people thought they were connected and one was formed to oppose the other. There were even many rumors of them clashing against each other in landscape-changing battles, although the last part seemed a bit far-fetched to Urza. Now she realized, that may have been the whole point. Considering neither guild was actually affiliated with the Magic Council, they would prefer to be left alone in their endeavors. What better way than to rely on some crazy rumors that could only increase their notoriety and clearly say not to mess with them? In fact, she wouldn't be surprised the guilds themselves were behind some of them. Still, there were apparently truths behind them, even if the details were exaggerated. In fact, if Cage Shelter really had 3 Dragon Slayers, then the story about No Volpi having 3 as well and the intense rivalry between the 2 guilds was most likely true. She would need to inform Natsu about it. He was after all a Dragon Slayer as well and he was also looking for a dragon. He would certainly be happy to learn there were others like him, searching for their lost parent. In fact, maybe she should try to learn more about the blonde Dragon Slayer in front of her, as well as his elusive guild. First, she would need to find out what its affiliations were. Even if they didn't oppose the Magic Council openly, Cage Shelter could still be breaking the law covertly. After all, no one would know. Now that she thought about it, it was her duty as a member of a light guild to learn more about them. There were many rumors about their actions as well actually. Like them wiping out dark guilds, preventing demonic rituals, retrieving missing or kidnapped people. The people that were directly helped never described them in detail though. Just that they were forever indebted to Cade Shelter. During the whole time she was thinking these things, Naruto was just looking at the girl, that had started staring at him, with the same faraway look he saw when he woke up. Maybe it was a habit of hers. Well, since the conversation was put on pause for now, the blonde decided it was his turn to look over the beauty in front of him. Turning his gaze from her brown eyes, he proceeded in taking in her whole image. The girl in front of him practically radiated confidence, strong will and immense power. She definitely was one of the most beautiful young women he had come across of. She had long, straight scarlet hair, a bit of which fell over her right eye, covering it slightly. He could see an earring with the shape of a miniature spearhead hanging from her left ear. Her attire consisted of a simple metal breastplate with a high armored collar. It was composed of several plates, enlarging in correspondence with the girl's chest, and was decorated on the left side with the Heart Cruise Company mark. A cross, with an edge pointing downwards having the shape of a heart and donning the brand's name over the cross right edge. The armor was completed with shoulder guards, made from 4 metal plates each, and a waist guard composed of several leaf-shaped plates, held up by a simple, brown, leather belt. Underneath it, the Scarlet Beauty wore a long-sleeved ruffled silver blouse, or at least that was Naruto's guess, judging from the sleeves. His eyes continued going down her waist onto a blue-pelted short skirt and a pair of slender legs coming out from underneath it. Her outfit was completed with black knee-high leather boots. Only one coherent thought was in Naruto's mind as his eyes hastily moved upwards towards her face. Whoa! He was hoping she hadn't been talking during the time he was looking over her beautiful body, since he didn't want to ruin the first impression he had made even further. There was only so much a man was allowed, before he finds himself thrown out of a train, while it was still moving. To Naruto's relief, it seemed like the doucely pretty girl was still lost in her thoughts. Not trusting his eyes not to dart over her again, while she was still in her daze, the blonde decided it would be best if he brought her out of it. He looked at his black companion and poked him. Hey, Shika, wake up. It's not polite to keep a lady waiting, it's your turn to introduce yourself. That seemed to snap the redhead, who now turned her gaze towards the cat. It opened its eyes, giving her a disinterested look, before it sighed. But Naruto, she looks troublesome. It took Urza a couple of seconds to register what the cat's final words were, before she sent a glare towards its way. What? The soon-to-be mortally wounded feline maintained its bored expression, which was an achievement in itself that only served to make Urza even angrier, before it looked towards Naruto, saying, "See? Oh come on, Shika, you're giving her a horrible impression. Don't be like that, we'll be spending the next 2 days with her. The least we can do is be friendly and polite to a lady." Naruto then turned to her. "Sorry about him, he doesn't really have any ill thoughts. He's just annoyed I woke him up and he can't keep dreaming about clouds." Shika gave Naruto a look that had a desire for a retort behind it, but the cat decided it was too much trouble, so he lazily stood up. Urza for her part calmed down a bit thanks to Naruto's apology and realized that most likely all talking cats had obnoxious quirks about them. She took in the opportunity to study the black one before he made his introduction. He had brown narrow eyes and the fur around his ears had a strange shape, giving the appearance of pineapple leaves. She also noticed he had piercing on them, in the form of a pair of small round earrings. His belly and chest were forest green and he had the same headband as Naruto, except this one was tied over his shoulder with the metal plate being at his front and the cloth was colored in gray. Urza could also see the same orange handle with the metal ring sticking from behind his back. "My name is Shikamaru, or Shika for short. I am 6 years old and my birthday is on the 7th of July. I like sleeping, clouds and being generally lazy. I dislike troublesome situations, troublesome people, troublesome exceed and especially troublesome women." The cat's gaze seemed to linger a bit on her after the last part, which gave Urza the impression he was making a pointed comment at her. He looked at the ceiling and continued. "My hobbies are taking naps and watching clouds. My dreams of the future are to help the guild out with their things and marry a regular exceed, who isn't too ugly or too pretty, and have 2 children, first a girl, then a boy. Retire after my daughter gets married and my son successfully joins the guild, and spend the rest of my life playing chess, shogi, 4, or go, 5, then die of old age, before my wife." Urza blinked at the cat. That was one very specific dream. There was a question that was bugging her though. Exceed? Sheikah just nodded. Yeah, that's the name of my kind. You actually don't seem all that surprised at seeing a talking cat. Urza waved her hand. Our world is fickle creatures. Besides, I have a guildmate who I think is also an Exceed. Oh, so you are from a mage guild, miss. Actually I think it's your turn to introduce yourself now. The blonde mage chuckled sheepishly. Urza smiled slightly. You were right, after all you two did properly introduce yourselves, quite extensively at that. I guess I should follow your example. My name is Urza Scarlet and I am 19 years old. My likes are weapons and armors. My dislikes are any type of evilness, dark mages and dark guilds. I also dislike people that have improper conduct and behavior. Her eyes darted at the orange book that was now next to the blonde and then over to the white cat, before returning to Naruto's, prompting a small gulp from the young man. My hobby is enforcing the rules and my dream for the future is to turn Fairy Tail into a proper and respectful guild, whose members aren't just a bunch of savages eager to rush into a fight. The last part was said with a clear edge in her voice, as she remembered the day's earlier events. Wait. Fairy Tail. You mean you are Urza the Titania, the strongest female mage of Fairy Tail? Naruto exclaimed, while looking at her with wide eyes. Well, Urza smiled as she closed her eyes and ran a hand through her hair. I'm not that confident in myself. I think the title of strongest woman of Fairy Tail should go to Morgana. Naruto cocked his head slightly to the right with a confused expression on his face. Morgana? Who is she? I don't think I've heard of her. Morgana Le Fay. Urza nodded and explained, she is an S-class mage in my guild. I myself haven't seen her that much and when I have, she seemed a bit detached, but was still very kind towards us. Master said she is a really powerful mage and loves the guild a lot, but became kind of reclusive after some sort of accident. That is why she doesn't show up that much and is not very well known in the magic circles anymore. Have you tried fighting with her? If you did that, you would be able to tell which one of you is stronger. Urza just looked at the blonde. That was something that Natsu would have probably said. We're all dragon slayers alike. She is a guildmate, one that has been in the guild for much longer than me and I have rarely seen her get mad. I don't know how you act in your guild, but I can't just start a fight with her. No, it's not what I meant. Naruto motioned with his arms defensively. Of course, you are guildmates. You can't fight with each other. I was talking about a spar. Sure, it's not like a real battle, but it should still give you some idea of your level. Besides, you might even improve from it. Urza nodded. His reasoning seemed to be correct. I'm sorry, I'm just used to everyone fighting in the guild all the time, which isn't really proper behavior between guild mates. Sounds like they are giving you a hard time, Naruto chuckled. That's right, Urza scowled. Even though they're best friends, Natsu and Gray fight all the time for no reason. Not to mention Natsu would set things on fire and wreak havoc everywhere he goes, while Gray keeps going around half naked. And let's not forget Kana, who even though is a young lady consumes vast amounts of alcohol in the most degenerate of manners. Don't even get me started on. The Scarlet Beauty was suddenly interrupted by Naruto's laugh. She turned her scowl towards him, but the blonde said, if you worry so much about them, it means you really care. Urza's expression softened and she let out a small smile. Yeah, they're my guildmates. Naruto just nodded. Yeah, I know how it is. I have two troublesome mates right here. He pointed at the two Exceed, which prompted a hey from the white one and a snort from the black one. You are one to talk, Naruto. Who always gets a little overexcited and sticks his nose and meddles in other people's business? I don't know how you can use my word when you're practically a magnet for such situations and people. It was amazing how the quotation marks could actually be heard in Sheikah's irritated rant. Naruto just chuckled, while scratching the back of his head at the Exceed's retort. Urza on the other hand had something else on her mind. Come to think of it, you never introduced yourself. She turned to the white cat, who immediately grinned. Ignoring Naruto and Sheikah's groan, the Exceed stood on his right leg and started jumping, with his get a sandal letting out a clack with each jump. His little performance ended with a pose, where he had his arm extended in front of him, with the palm pointing at Urza. I am the great cat sage, Jiraiya, author of the Icha Icha series and a pervert second to none. My birthday is on the 11th of November and my likes are beautiful women, especially if they have huge breasts. Here the creepy cat was cut off by Naruto's hand, who looked apologetically at the redhead. Sorry about him. All you need to know is his name is Jiraiya and that he's a super pervert, who might try to peek on you while you're in the bath. Don't worry, I promise he won't give you any trouble during the night. His nervous smile faltered when it met Urza's stern look. I am quite surprised the author of the Icha Icha series is actually a cat. Her gaze hardened as she looked the blonde directly in the eyes. And you were reading it in public, which I must say is quite inappropriate and will give the wrong impression to people. Is your guild filled with ill-mannered perverts? Should I be worried during the night? No, of course not. Naruto lifted his hands in defense. I would never do something like that to a lady like yourself. And Jiraiya is the only pervert. Well, master as well, but all old men are perverts. He smiled slightly, which made Urza nod, since she remembered her master's own antics. Besides, the blonde continued, I was only reading it since our livelihood kind of depends on the sales. The redhead lifted a confused eyebrow at that. Naruto sighed and leaned in his seat. You look like a perspicacious, lady, so you probably know Cade Shelter is an independent guild, right? After receiving a nod from Urza, the blonde continued, because of that, we don't really receive official assignments. So as a guild, we don't have a steady income. Of course, the Magic Council lets us do jobs for them from time to time, but those are usually ones that are very dangerous or might even be S-class, so they take time to complete. And a big portion of the reward would usually cover the costs of our expenses during the length of the mission. My equipment is actually quite pricey. And the assignments we take on, that aren't from the council, we usually don't get paid for. Sometimes people would have troubles with demons, monsters or a dark guild, but wouldn't have enough funds to properly ask for help. And since our guild is on the lookout for things like that, because of some different reasons, we find out about them. They try to pay us afterwards, but it doesn't really feel right to take the little they have. So we just settle for favors and things like that. At least there are a lot of vacation spots we have available to us. The blonde chuckled. Urza was quite appalled by what she was hearing. If such a guild existed, then how come it wasn't considered a light one? Well, we do go on an occasional treasure hunt and take all the riches from the dark guilds we bring down. We return some of it to the people they were stolen from though. But in the end, we are still able to manage quite well. Suddenly, Naruto's expression became serious. Recently, things have started stirring though. The dark guilds have become more active and for some reason there are a lot more demon and monster sightings in Fury. We don't know the causes behind all that, but we haven't had the opportunity to take a paid assignment. And the council doesn't look like it has any, since all the light guilds are probably taking them. The mage world has become quite active. The last sentence the blonde said with a faraway look directed at the window while he moved his arms behind his head. In the brief silence that fell what she had just heard. It was true, the Balam Alliance had started increasing in volume and constantly pulled more and more dark guilds in it. It was quickly becoming the leading force in the underworld, and now she realized the assignments about demons, monsters and other magical creatures have been increasing. She had been too busy with completing jobs and keeping the guild in check to properly notice the bigger picture. Did Master know about it as well? Urza resolved herself she would speak with him the moment she returned from this mission. The eerie silence was surprisingly broken by Sheikah. The cat had sat at the window with his back turned towards them and was looking at the now darkening sky. Now, Urza was able to notice that there were several runes inscribed over the orange handle, which was actually attached to a three-pronged kunai. Her eyes quickly darted over to Naruto's pockets and she noticed the handles there had runes as well. That's what we are doing right now. We recently learned that there was increased demon activity at Nebula Town and there were even some disappearances reported as well. There's actually a chance a demon summoner is working in the area and the town hasn't put out a request for help from a guild or the council. Since it can become quite dangerous, we decided we should look into it. Even though it's really troublesome. Sheikah explained with a slightly irritated tone in his voice. It was clear the Exceed would have preferred being somewhere else, doing generally lazy things. Urza frowned and reached for her purse. Actually, she took out a flyer. They did post an assignment request. It is an S-Class 1 and I officially took it today, she finished, as she handed it over to the blonde. Naruto immediately took it and looked it over. That's strange. I wonder what made them change their mind. And the request seems a bit off. What do you mean? Urza lifted an eyebrow. Well, it asks for help in disposing of a demon. But from what we've heard, they actually have problems with multiple demons. The blonde placed his hand on his chin and continued looking over the assignment. Well, that's just great. Jiraiya's annoyed voice was heard. We traveled all this way for nothing. They already got a mage for the job. I for one don't mind letting someone else do the dirty work for a change. Sheikah leaned on the window. The whole thing looked too troublesome anyway. We were never sure what exactly we were getting into. As usual. But then he noticed Naruto's expression. Oh, no. Hey, I have an idea, the blonde exclaimed. How about we accompany you and help you out? Urza frowned a bit at him, but the young man continued with a smile. I'm sure someone as powerful as you won't really need it, but we are already on our way there anyway, and we do have a lot of experience with dealing with demons and summoners. Plus the whole assignment looks a bit suspicious, so some backup can never really hurt if things get ugly. Of course, since you are the one that took the official request, you can keep the whole reward. It's not really that big of an issue with us. He handed the flyer back to her. So, partners? Urza took the flyer and looked Naruto in the eyes. She didn't think she would need help, but he was right, anything could happen. Plus, this would be a good opportunity to witness firsthand Cage Shelter's ability and determine conclusively the type of guild they were. And considering all the rumors about him, the blonde should be able to handle himself if things went haywire. She could feel he was quite strong as well. It was decided then. The redhead smiled and offered her hand. Partners. I'm not all that confident either, and you seem to already know some things about the place. It would be irresponsible of me to deny your offer for assistance. Naruto just returned a bright grin and took her hand in his own. Great. Sheikah just sighed, muttering what Urza now considered his favorite word, while Jiraiya grinned mischievously. Hee hee, the white cat chuckled. Gorgeous and modest, you definitely are the full package. I think I might be in love. Before Urza could respond, Naruto let out a groan. Come on, Jiraiya. Can you please stop hitting on all the beautiful girls we meet? And you wonder why Mistgun, accidentally, fails to inform you when he's taking on missions and leaves you in the guild. Even though she was annoyed at the cat, Urza still smiled at the blonde's words. Apparently Cage Shelter members had the knack for putting quotation marks on their words whilst just speaking. A yawn was heard from Sheikah, before the Black Exceed spoke. Well, it's getting pretty late. How about we go get some dinner and go to sleep? Everyone seemed to agree with his proposition, and the group headed to the restaurant car. Dinner had been quite enjoyable. Naruto, Sheikah and Jiraiya had spent it squabbling and exchanging constant banter. Something Urza had found quite amusing actually, which was surprising, since her guild would constantly give her grief with such inner fighting. In fact, the redhead realized that was exactly the reason. The atmosphere, the three Kates, as she had began calling them, especially since Naruto had those whisker marks, had created made her feel at home. It was even better, since their exchanges didn't have real menace behind them and the trio didn't end up fighting and wrecking the whole train in the process. Then there were their other quirks as well. She couldn't believe someone could harbor such love for a dish like ramen, but Naruto's explanation on how it was a dish of the gods, that existed in all universes, and seeing him order 3 bowls had actually made her curious about it. She had to admit, it had not been a bad choice after all. Sheikah had been quite excited for his 5-fish surprise dish as well, but had actually managed to fall asleep while waiting for it. As for Jiraiya, he had spent the evening getting drunk on sake and fooling around with the waitresses. Urza had no idea how he was able to accomplish it, but the girls had actually found him quite cute and even liked his devilish side. They would let him rub around their legs, not minding they actually wore skirts, and would even pick him up at times and squeeze him tightly into their chests. She briefly considered he used some kind of spell, but after a quick check, she realized there was nothing of the sorts. He really was the living embodiment of a tomcat. Urza's favorite part of the evening was the desserts. There were so many kinds of cakes, she had a really hard time deciding which 4 to pick. In the end, Naruto had just proposed they ordered all of them and share. Her least favorite part though was when the time came to pay the bill. She wasn't worried about the amount she would have to pay, until she discovered she had forgotten her purse in their cabin. The redhead had immediately gotten up to retrieve it, but the blonde had just said she'd pay for the next dinner. Even though she was quite embarrassed by her blunder and had even asked to be punished for it, she still didn't miss the evil snicker from the two exceed. Currently, she was walking behind Naruto, who was dragging a weeping Jiraiya by his tail. Urza had noticed during the night that he had the same metal plate with the cage shelter mark sewn on the back of his red coat. "Oh, please, Naruto," whined the cat, while it continued leaving scratch marks on the floor. "The waitresses said they were going to have a slumber party and they even invited me. I promise, I wouldn't even need to sneak it. Come on, it would help me with my next book, we'd get a lot of sales." "No," the young man was explicit. "I don't want to have to heal you again, after another one of your little adventures. Please." Jiraiya just kept on begging. "Naruto, maybe it's not such a bad idea, they did invite him, we all saw it. It might be for the best, considering." Sheikah trailed off and looked slightly back at Urza, who just lifted an eyebrow. The blonde stopped and looked behind as well. Sheikah did have a point. No matter how much he promised he had consumed, Naruto wasn't sure he'd be able to keep Jiraiya off Urza. It would mean he'd have to stay awake the whole night, which would be stupid, considering they would arrive at Nebula tomorrow and he'd need to be completely rested. Sure, if things went bad, the girls would probably beat him up, but that was still better than being killed by Titania. And the waitresses did really invite him. As a man, it didn't feel right to stop him. With a sigh, Naruto let go of Jiraiya's tail, much to the surprise of everyone present. "Fine. Just keep yourself from trouble, watch your behavior and be back by the time we reach Nebula." He reached to his pocket and took out a three-pronged kunai. "You know how to get me." Jiraiya immediately jumped and hugged the blonde's face. "Thank you, Naruto. I owe you one." Before the blonde could even peel him off, the white cat sprouted a pair of wings, swiped the kunai and disappeared in a white blur of speed. The young man just let out a small smile. Hopefully his next book would actually be more interesting. Was that really wise? What if he does something inappropriate? He met Urza's stern look. It'd be way more troublesome if he stayed. It was Sheikah that responded. "Besides, they did invite him. From what Mistgun's been telling us, this happens pretty often." "Mistgun?" the redhead questioned, as they continued walking towards their cabin. "Yeah, he's a guildmate and my brother," Naruto explained. "He was the one that actually found Jiraiya in a public bath. They somehow bonded and the pervert came back with him and joined our guild. They usually travel together, but on their last journey Jiraiya had somehow embarrassed him and he went without him on the next one. And there was no way in hell I'd let that tomcat stay in the guild with my sister." They reached the compartment and the blonde opened the door for her, while giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, despite being a huge pervert, even he wouldn't go too far without permission. And the girls did ask for him, so they should probably know what to expect." Urza just nodded as she went inside, followed by the two remaining Kates. They all sat down, before the Scarlet Beauty spoke. "Since we'll be working together, I think we should know more about each other's abilities. I will start this time." She saw she had Naruto and Sheikah's full attention and continued, "I am an expert user of Requip magic. It's a type of magic, where I store weapons and armor in a pocket dimension, after which I can summon them whenever I need them. I am actually fast enough to requip them during battle, and because I not only use magic weapons, but magic armors as well, my particular style is called the Knight." Urza smiled at the bewildered expressions that were before her. "I am also very skilled with telekinesis magic and I dare say I possess master swordsmanship as well as expert hand-to-hand combat ability." "Wow. The rumors about you really were true." Naruto let out a breath. "Rumors?" Urza ran a hand through her hair. "That your power is only matched by your beauty." The blonde chuckled, before he continued, "Okay, my turn now. I am a Sky Dragon Slayer. I can use various types of air and wind magic for both offensive and defensive purposes. I also have the ability to use healing magic as well, although it's somewhat taxing on me and I'm not as good as my sister." "What do you eat to replenish your magical energy?" Naruto looked at her surprised. "Oh, not many people know about that ability of ours." As expected of Urza Scarlet. The redhead smirked. "You give me too much credit. I have a guildmate who is a dragon slayer, that's how I know." Naruto was once again surprised. "Really? Maybe after this assignment is finished, I'll visit your guild. It's good to meet with other dragon slayers." He smiled. "Anyway, I eat air. It may sound strange, but it's actually pretty tasty." Oh, you might know this as well, but my scales would protect me from any sort of air-related magic attacks. I also know a couple of support spells. Urza nodded. Sky Dragon Slayer magic sounds quite dynamic. I've witnessed the power of a Slayer before, so you must be quite strong as well, considering you have so much flexibility. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I'm pretty awesome. Oh, I'm also very adept in rune magic. I can do barriers, enhancements and other various stuff. I can teleport as well. This time it was the Scarlet Beauty's turn to be surprised. Really? That's pretty rare and hard to master. Yeah, I can even use it in battle. Naruto let out an embarrassed smile. I see. So the rumors about you being a powerful S-class mage were not exaggerated either. Absolutely. Between the two of us, we should breeze over this mission without any problems. The blonde showed a confident grin. Great. Now I'm sure things will get troublesome. They always do when you say that. Shikamaru groaned as he buried his head in the seat. Oh come on, no need to be so pessimistic. Oh right, Shika like all Exceed can use Era magic, which gives him the ability to fly, among other things. Yeah, I've seen my guild mate before and Jiraiya demonstrated it as well. Well, that's pretty much it. Naruto grinned. We should. Leave you so you can change, and he began standing up, before he was stopped by Urza. There's no need. I can even demonstrate my magic so you can get a basic idea. The redhead stood up, before her armor and clothes turned into light and started disappearing. The blonde's eyes widened, since he could almost see her completely naked body, but before it went further, the light wrapped around her and took the shape of a set of blue PJs with the Heart Cruise mark all over them. Naruto had the presence of mind to recover his jaw, before he spoke. So, that's the knight. I'm guessing in battle you would use it to equip magical armors. It also explains why you're not carrying any luggage. The blonde trailed off, still not being able to shake the image of her almost naked body from his mind. He wasn't sure he actually wanted to either. Well, not exactly, I still have luggage, it's just in the mail car. Urza smirked, satisfied at the stutter she had managed to cause. Still, that was really amazing. Naruto let out a grin. It's a good thing Jiraiya wasn't here too. It would have created quite the hassle, Shika added. The blonde just snickered as he stood up and picked his backpack from the overhead compartment. Urza stood as well and opened the door. I'll leave you to change in private. The blonde just nodded and started taking off his coat, while the redhead closed the door behind her. After a minute it was opened by Naruto, who just wore a black t-shirt and a pair of orange PJ bottoms, with blue clouds over them. He finished folding his clothes and returned the backpack from where he had picked it. Before that though, Urza noticed he took out something wrapped in a crimson cloth. He unraveled it to reveal several board games and different decks of cards. Naruto looked at her. It's still a bit early, how about we play something? The Scarlet Beauty smiled. Sure, why not? The blonde motioned at the games, smiling mischievously, laid his pick. Urza looked over the possibilities and made her choice. On the late afternoon of the following day the train was approaching Nebula Station. Urza had actually spent a very enjoyable evening with Naruto and Shika, which was so far followed by quite the fun day. They had told her stories of their various encounters with demons and dark guilds, as well as of the places they had gone to. Jiraiya hadn't returned at all, not even for breakfast or lunch, and at one point Urza had expressed her concern for the absent feline. Naruto had reassured her that everything was okay and if something were to happen, the White Exceed had a way of contacting him immediately. Since it was a common occurrence they would most likely meet him when they got off the train. Which was going to be soon. After Naruto finished putting his backpack on, they headed for the mail car to pick up Urza's luggage. Both he and Shika were surprised of it. It actually consisted of several very large briefcases that were tied to a large wooden cart. The Black Exceed muttered a "Knew it," which was heard only by Naruto, who in turn couldn't help but say, "That's really a lot of luggage you have there. I thought you could store clothes and armor in a pocket dimension." Foo. Of course I can. Urza smirked. These are filled mainly with food and ingredients, as well as various things for camping. One can never be prepared. Both Kate Shelter members looked at the mountain of cases. Those were filled with food. Could she even eat that much? How prepared could you get? That girl was the living definition of overkill. When the train finally stopped, one of the walls of the car came down, creating a ramp. The Scarlet Beauty simply grabbed a piece of rope attached to the cart and with little effort started pulling it. Naruto had thought of offering her help until he saw that. He then carried on to wonder how strong Urza Scarlet was exactly. After getting off the train, the redhead looked around in confusion. The station basically consisted of a single open platform with one small building next to it. There were no buildings around it to signify this was even a town. The only thing that greeted them was a thick mist. She also noticed they were one of the very few people that actually got off the train, which was really strange, considering it was packed. This is Nebula Town. We haven't made some sort of mistake, have we? And how come we are the only ones getting off the train? I imagine word of the demons got out and that they were forced to hire a guild. So most likely, the people on the train are either headed to Shirotsume or even Town of Oak. As for the town itself, it's actually inside the forest. Naruto motioned towards somewhere in the mist. See that road over there? Urza focused a bit and indeed, she could see the road and outlines of huge trees in the thick fog. What's with the weather, she wondered. This place, Nebula Town, is actually a famous tourist attraction, specifically because of it, Shika explained. You mean people come here because of this mist? Urza was a bit surprised at this revelation. The forest over there is actually known as Cloud Forest. By itself, it's not that special, since fog like this occurs in forests in particular places near mountainous regions or with tropical climate. What makes this place unique though is that the magic here is unstable, which in conjunction with the mist and the lighting can produce some of the most beautiful sights in the world. Sometimes it is said the fog would even take different shapes of dragons or other mythical beasts. It could even show the future or the past, and even though it is just a mist, you could even be able to hear the sounds of people talking. That might actually be the reason for so many demon sightings. The Exceed continued with his explanations. Since the fabric of reality is weakened here, someone could use that to summon dark creatures more easily. That is actually the reason there was also no job request until now. Naruto joined in. Because it is such a big tourist attraction, the mayor or the people wouldn't want such bad publicity to affect their business. For them to create an official assignment like this either means things have gotten really bad or... The blonde trailed off. Or... Urza lifted an eyebrow. Or someone else put it, without the knowledge of the people. Shika finished grimly. The eerie atmosphere that followed was suddenly broken by the sound of giggles. The three of them turned towards one of the wagons to see a flying Jiraiya talking to two of the waitresses from last night. Both of them took a turn in crushing him in their bosoms, before giving him a small kiss on the head. They boarded the train afterwards and gave him a small wave as it started departing. The white Exceed returned the wave, before it flew over the group with a wide grin on his face. Naruto shook his head at the allied cat. I don't get it. How do you manage to do it each time? Jiraiya's grin just widened as he puffed his chest. It's the mane, coupled with my irresistible charm. And you're one to speak, we both know you're not that innocent yourself. The Exceed handed him the three-pronged kunai back. Naruto didn't take it though, instead he just snorted. The imminent retort was interrupted by Shika. I don't want to stop you from comparing or anything, but can we head to Nebula? It's getting pretty late and I'm not really keen on traveling in that thick mist during the night. Plus, I really want to take a nap. You've been sleeping for the bigger part of the day, Urza observed as the group started walking. Considering what might be awaiting us, I'd rather catch on my sleep beforehand. They reached the station building, but it turned out there were no available coaches or magical cars. Great. So what now? Jiraiya spoke with clear irritation in his voice. I say we just follow the road. The town shouldn't be that far from the station, at most an hour away by foot. If it's no trouble for you. Naruto turned towards Urza, eyeing her huge luggage cart. The redhead shrugged. Of course not. Let's get moving. The sooner we get to town, the sooner we'll find out what's the situation. The mages started following the road. The mist was so thick, it only allowed them to see a couple of meters in front of them. The silence of the forest coupled with the darkening evening atmosphere had somehow created a tension in the air. Each one of them was on guard as they moved on, including Shika, who only appeared to be sleeping on top of Urza's luggage. The heavy feeling only kept increasing as they started seeing shadows moving around the trees as if they were being followed or watched. Urza noticed Naruto had casually moved his hands over his pockets, but the clear tension in his back and shoulders told her he would pull his weapons in a moment's notice. She couldn't really blame him, The feeling of being observed was ever so present in her gut, and she felt her hands itching to summon one of her swords. She quelled the urge, since she knew such an act would only increase the tension, which would not be a good idea. Being observant and aware was one thing. Being paranoid was a whole other. They continued walking, without breaking the silence, as the last rays of daylight disappeared. Naruto reached into his backpack and pulled out 2 torches. She expected them to light with fire, but instead soft green light started pouring from the tips. Naruto handed her one, and the redhead noticed there were actually lacrima crystals at the tops. These are special lighting crystals from a cave. I charged them with a bit of my power, so even if you drop them, the light won't go out. They should stay lit for at least an hour more, or until we simply draw the power out. Urza took the torch. I didn't know such lacrima was naturally occurring. Where did you find it? The blonde chuckled. It's from a place I was raised at. The cave is actually really beautiful, since it is filled with different colored crystals. I can show you sometime. They continued on their way in silence again, but this time the tension had died down a bit. Urza could feel that little exchange had helped her relax somewhat. Her muscles were still ready to spring like an arrow from a strained bow, but the bad feeling in her gut had reduced. The scenery of clouded trees remained unchanged, until they reached a clearing with a huge lake. The road passed right by the shore, and as they approached it, the mist cleared to reveal an incredible sight. The water was crystal clear and was actually reflecting everything above it. The trees, the mountain, the moon and the stars, even the walking group. Wow! Urza felt the simple word exit her mouth. This was probably one of the most beautiful things she had seen. Incredible, isn't it? Jiraiya asked as he flew a bit over the water. This is one of those sights I told you about, Shika explained. But in truth, it's a natural occurring event. What the unstable region does is actually really in times bring the reflections to life over the waters. Naruto's attention was caught by something, and he suddenly turned his head towards a specific spot in the lake. Hey! What's that? The group looked at the spot he was pointing at to see a small bubble form on the surface before it burst, distorting the crystal waters. They approached it cautiously and tried looking into them. Because of the tiny waves, their reflections were slightly miffed. After a bit, the water returned back to its crystal clear state. The group's eyes widened though, as they saw the reflection of a dark silhouette swinging at them from behind. A round short figure made its way into a dark room. It was clad in light blue robes, yellow pointy shoes and a pair of yellow gloves. At the top, there was a yellow pointy hat covering its head, obstructing any sort of vision to its face. A vile stench followed him, as if it had a mind of its own. The figure reached one of the walls of the room and stood before a large lacrima crystal. It clapped its hands and the room was slightly illuminated by the pale light of a pair of tripod candle holders, positioned on the walls. The crystal itself was also illuminated to show a cloaked person. Yes. A voice was heard from it. The mages that took the request have arrived. The round figure spoke. Who was it that accepted it? Urza the Titania, from Fairy Tale. Good, she is powerful. The voice from the communication lacrima paused for a bit. You said mages, yes? I thought she operated alone, no? Indeed she does, however, I sensed another powerful magical presence enter the mist with her. They were also accompanied by 2 smaller ones. We can't have our operation being ruined now, no. Find out who it is, yes. I don't want any unexpected hindrances, no. The hat-wearing figure snorted. They can't stop us. Even if they manage to defeat the behemoth, I would just kill them myself. They will be sacrificed. It paused briefly, until the dim light was reflected from madly grinning teeth, the only thing that could be seen on the shadowed face. Still, I sent them a small greeting. Without a moment's hesitation Urza ducked under the swipe and felt the force of the swing ruffle her hair. Naruto took out a kunai but was hit mid-jump and sent flying into a tree, making him drop it. Yet, instead of the blonde's body only his backpack and a gust of wind collided with the bark. The gust circled the tree, shaking the leaves a bit, before it concentrated in the form of a small tornado over one of the larger branches. It quickly took the shape of the orange-clad mage as he turned his head to where he had been a moment ago. Naruto saw Urza's clothes and armor turn into light, almost exposing her body the same way as the previous night before it wrapped around her and took the shape of a different armor. It was black in color with silver trimming at various places. A silver-edged breastplate covered part of Urza's chest, revealing her rich cleavage and leaving her belly exposed. Black plates wrapped around her back and waist until they reached a very large waistguard. It was composed of very long, silver-edged plates, shaped like feathers and decorated by silver crosses with her front left exposed. Her groin was covered by a dark bikini-like garment and she wore black metal greaves with silver-edged plates extending and wrapping up to her hips. The redhead had a pair of slim black gauntlets reaching to her elbows that were equipped with prominent protection for her hands. They sported silver parts in a pattern reminiscent of straps, and her upper arms were covered by large shoulder guards that consisted of two silver-edged plates each, one over the other, that had large silver crosses on them. The armor was completed with a high collar with a shape similar to one from a dress, and around her neck Urza had a silver necklace with 3 large red crystals. Her scarlet hair was tied in a high ponytail with 2 bangs framing her face. What caught Naruto's attention the most were a pair of bat wings that came from the armor's back. Black metal arms acted as the base structure, and the wings themselves were composed from a membrane-like material. The armor looked kind of familiar to him, but his mind was currently preoccupied with something else and didn't have the proper presence to pinpoint exactly from where. Whoa, Naruto briefly thought, did she get almost naked every time she re-equipped armor? And how come her armor didn't cover some parts that should be considered important? Not that he minded the view, Urza looked breathtaking, but if things were to keep going like that, it would be a bit distracting. Okay, maybe very distracting. He saw the redhead make a huge swing with a saber that had a black and red decorated handle, producing a large cutting wave. The thing that had attacked them lifted its giant arm to guard itself, apparently expecting its thick skin to offer enough protection. Judging by the roar of pain and the gush of blood that appeared on its hand, face and body, it didn't. Naruto looked over the creature. He noted several things. It was huge, it was very ugly, and was most likely not that mobile. It looked like an overgrown boar that stood on 2 legs. The hooves were actually pointed, like spears, and black fur was covering its whole body, except its giant belly and flabby chest. Its arms were enormous and clawed, and a pair of horns came from its shoulders, slightly taking the appearance of shoulder guards. It had a short swishing tail with a furred end and a pair of vulture-like wings sprouting from its hunched back that had 2 clawed fingers coming from each middle joint. Its face was the worst part. It had 2 yellow glowing eyes, and 4 pairs of curved tusks came from its elongated snout. It had 3 pairs of horns at the sides of its forehead, positioned right above pointed ears. Naruto lifted an eyebrow at the creature's disproportionate appearance. How would it even be able to fly? The wings didn't look like they could support its huge body in the slightest. It was not the time to ponder physics though, as the creature lifted its giant arm and with a roar attempted to flatten Urza into the ground. The redhead flew to the right, easily dodging the demon's wide swing, and sliced at its legs, producing another huge gash and a roar of pain. The blonde was about to jump from the tree and assist her, before the voice of Shika held him back. Naruto, wait. The young mage turned to his right and saw the black exceed land on the same branch, accompanied by Jiraiya. What, I should go help her, he said impatiently. No, it's a bad idea. We aren't familiar with our surroundings and we don't know if there aren't any more enemies hiding around. Furthermore, if these are the demons causing problems, we should assume they know the area. Shika explained. It's best if we regroup and make a plan. Naruto was about to protest that they should deal with the one in front of them before that, but something else caught his attention. Waves formed at the lake before the water began rising. It took the form of a blue-horned demon with a solid muscled chest and stomach. Its legs were still formed from the lake though, and the blonde could see small fish swimming in them. It lifted a clawed arm and produced a trident made of water. The blonde nodded. Fine. The blue demon threw its weapon at the redhead's back. Stay here, I'll get Urza. Said redhead had been busy with dodging and slashing at the giant demon in front of her. Her blonde companion had disappeared since the start of the battle, which made her worry. What if that initial hit actually hurt him? Maybe it was a mistake to have him accompany her on such a dangerous mission. Distracted in her thoughts, she failed to sense the new presence and the incoming attack from behind until it was too late. Urza gritted her teeth and hoped her armor would provide enough protection until she felt a hand softly touching her waist. Before she could even express any sort of surprise at the sudden appearance of said hand, her view was changed. One moment she saw ugly demon in front of her and expecting a hit from behind, The next she was looking at a pointed trident made of water hit said demon in the chest. Not only that, but she realized she saw it from the side some distance away and on a tree branch, which was a huge change from her previous surroundings. Urza turned a confused look to the hand that was touching her and followed it to reach the missing blonde who was making a shushing sign. Shish, I teleported us to a tree. Sheikah said it was better if we regrouped. He couldn't continue, interrupted by the roar of the giant demon. Wasent hi, ha h micro r, asterisk. Urza narrowed her eyes at the strange speech. She turned a questioning gaze to Naruto, but it was Jiraiya that whispered. That's demonic. I wa dollar amin a he re partial differential hey a partial differential. Dollar oppo micro r winning. O micro dollar ho micro pound say a pound rig. The blue demon retorted as it approached the shore. It wasn't actually moving its legs, it looked like the lake just pushed him. Urza realized that the water trident that was supposed to impale her came from it. She should thank Naruto for getting her out of that one. The big demon snorted. Where partial differential I partial differential dollar he go? On you partial differential where I dollar asrox a dollar? He dollar I partial differential he wa dollar j micro dollar goino os dollar erb. On you partial differential he ss pound own partial differential dollar how partial differential o micro of nowhere on you partial differential o micro cent he partial differential her. So for he so h partial differential I dollar appear partial differential in on you ornya jeff pound a dollar h. Ha ssa dollar r partial differential. The big one snarled, before it grinned maniacally. I'm going o cent h ha c cent h on you partial differential make her pa for he wo micro new dollar he in pound I cent e partial differential. I pound say fee dollar in own her f pound e dollar h onid. The water demon made a disgusted expression. O micro dollar I sent ken me. F micro noon, I sent on you dollar he dollar aim ass o micro. While the demons talked in their language the mages were planning their counterattack. We have the chance for a surprise attack, although it's not that big. They should be alert and expecting us. Sheikah caught everyone's attention. Think you can handle the big one? Naruto looked at Urza. Its skin is quite thick and its speed is nothing to frown at. The redhead smiled confidently. I can take it down easily if I have a moment's distraction. The water one could be a problem though, we don't know its full abilities. I think I can take care of it and provide that distraction. Do you need long? The Scarlet Beauty shook her head. The mist is coming down again, Jiraiya noted. This could be troublesome. Everyone turned towards Sheikah. Why? Naruto asked. We could use this to our advantage. Not really. Considering they've been here longer than us, they might be more used to fighting in these conditions. Not to mention we still don't know if these two are the only enemies around. If they aren't we can still get surprised in this mist while we're fighting, Sheikah explained. Naruto had a thoughtful expression with his arm holding his chin. All right. I think I can keep the mist away for a bit. Sheikah and Jiraiya, you two go to the skies and warn us if you see something or if the mist is coming back and we haven't finished. He turned to Urza. How are you going to take down Mr. Big and Ugly? For an answer, the black armor that Urza was wearing transformed into bubbles of light barely covering key locations of her body, before they wrapped around it in the form of a new outfit. It was a golden-colored armor with a breastplate consisting of two parts. The upper one was comprised of one giant plate, covering Urza's chest and stomach, with a large cross over her belly. Underneath it the second part was in the form of several metal plates that went down her legs until they reached the upper half of her hips, taking the form of a short skirt. The plates were in a spider-like pattern and the edge was covered with fur. Around her neck attached on a stranded band was a large medallion in the form of a four-leaf clover. Her shoulder guards were large and pointing upwards with fur trimmings on the lower edges that covered her biceps. The rest of her arms had ample protection as well. She had a pair of elbow guards that had a small decoration reminiscent of dragon's wings and a pair of large gauntlets with fur over her wrists. She had a pair of plated greaves on her legs, with plates going up to her lower hips. There was more fur around her ankles and the lower edges of her knee guards that had the same dragon wing decorations as her elbows, albeit a bit bigger. The armor was completed with a golden headgear that looked a lot like a pair of rabbit ears. Overall, the whole outfit had a very barbaric look to it. This is the giant's armor. It increases the wearer's throwing power. The redhead explained. And this? Her saber disappeared and was replaced by a large spear with a black handle and silver spearhead decorated with a golden cross that had a drum-like end. Is the evil crushing spear which subdues darkness. With my armor's ability it should be more than enough to finish the demon. Your armors are quite impressive, Titania. Just like that beautiful body of yours. Jiraiya commented with a perverted grin. Not the time. Naruto groaned. HMPF, hypocrite. You were probably thinking the same thing. The white Exceed retorted. Let's get going. The blonde said hastily, hoping he'd be fast enough to hide his blush. He transformed into a small tornado, before dispersing into a violent gust of wind and taking off around the area, blowing the mist away. Urza leapt off from the branch and landed with ease, creating 2 small craters in the ground around her feet. The duo of Exceed took off into the air, which caught the demon's attention. They noticed the redhead as well and turned towards her before Naruto appeared between them in a crouching position, grabbing the 3-pronged kunai he had dropped in the beginning of the fight. Hi! He greeted the water demon before he erupted with a roundhouse kick, striking it on the chin and sending it flying backwards into the lake. The big one was making another swipe at the blonde, but was met with Naruto's outstretched hand. Sky Dragon's spiraling orb. The ugly demon let out an agonizing roar as the swirling wind sphere bore into its arm. At that moment Naruto heard Urza's battle cry and caught a glimpse of the rapidly approaching evil crushing spear. Without staying to see the outcome, he jumped onto the lake's surface, his orange cloak fluttering behind, and dashed towards the water demon that had now recovered. The creature had stood up and had morphed his hands into weapons. The left had the shape of a spear of swirling water while the right looked like a giant double-edged blade. He snorted at the human's foolishness at stepping on the now distorted surface, which was clearly his domain. He sent his magical power into it, forming several spikes underneath and directing them at the blonde. He heard his opponent chant something that created 4 small cyclones around his arms and legs, as well as an additional one circling his weapon in a figure-8 pattern, but dismissed it while he directed his attack. That proved to be a huge mistake as the spikes missed the blonde's location completely. In an instant, Naruto was in front of the water demon, kicking a large amount of water from under his feet and slashing with the kunai at its throat. His adversary moved back, narrowly avoiding the attack and tried to impale the blonde with its left hand, following it with a slash of its own with its right. Naruto sidestepped the spear before jumping in the air and spinning over the double-edged blade. The moment he regained his footing he spun again, landing a kick to the demon's waist that sent it flying to the right. Not stopping his assault the blonde followed his enemy, lifting his right palm. Sky Dragon's spiraling orb. This time the demon was faster in recovering and seeing the imminent danger it turned its spear into a water shield that absorbed most of the attack, dispersing it into a violent maelstrom before the creature F-slash with its right hand. Urza had changed back into her usual attire and was walking towards the slain demon to recover her spear. She regarded Naruto's battle with interest and was impressed at the young man's fighting prowess. She briefly wondered how was he able to stay on top of the lake's surface, until she saw white runes glowing on his black sandals. The redhead realized they were probably the cause behind his water walking abilities when she reached her weapon. Making sure the huge demon was indeed dead, she touched her spear, sending it back to the pocket dimension in a flash of light before she turned to the raging battle on the lake's surface. The Scarlet Beauty briefly wondered if she should assist her temporary partner, but decided against it. It looked like he had things under control and she did want to see the extent of the infamous Orange Flash's abilities. Not to mention, if Naruto wasn't able to defeat a demon of that caliber, then he wouldn't be able to handle a S-class assignment. Since Naruto had made the battle up close and personal, the water demon was forced to shorten his weapons. While his right hand still had the form of a double-edged blade, his left had 5 clawed fingers. What was more, he couldn't use the lake's water to his advantage since it would require a bit of concentration. If he was even slightly distracted he could fall victim to the mage's relentless assault. He couldn't believe he was being pressured that much by a mere human. It was time to go on the offensive. He swiped with his claws only for his wrist to be pushed back by the blonde's right, before the young man cocked it backwards for a counterattack. That was a feint though. The water demon's true attack was the slash with his right hand. Since the mage was this close, he wouldn't be able to dodge and his weapon was too short to properly block. The creature saw his opponent move his hand to attempt just that and almost smiled. It was useless. To say he was shocked at what followed would be an understatement. The three-pronged kunai suddenly changed. The side blades grew slightly, while the middle was extended by quite a bit, giving it an overall look of a short claymore. The now longer weapon blocked the incoming strike without a hitch as realization struck. The mage had anticipated his feint and had made one of his own. A feint within a feint. The water demon could only watch helplessly as the cyclone bracelet over the blonde's right wrist extended and engulfed his full arm with the tip of his palm looking like the pointed end of a tornado funnel. Sky Dragon's tornado spearhand. Naruto's hand impaled the demon through its chest and went out of its back. The creature's arms fell limply to its sides, while its watery legs disappeared into the lake. The blonde let out a smile and turned his weapon back to normal. His plan had worked quite well. Many would think rushing into the enemy's domain was stupid, but it only counted if you gave your opponent enough time to actually use it to his advantage. He started making a motion to remove his hand from the demon's chest, but was suddenly surprised when the creature grabbed it tightly. Naruto snapped his head to its face, as his enemy locked gazes with him. The demon coughed slightly, before it whispered, "Thank you." Life faded from its eyes afterwards and its body started to dissolve into water. Naruto moved his now freed hand hastily and stared in shock. What the hell was that all about? Why would a demon of all creatures thank someone for being killed? Urza. To your left. Naruto was brought back from his inner thoughts by Jiraiya's scream. He turned his head rapidly to the shore to witness a giant wave of fire heading for the redhead. The Scarlet Beauty took cover behind the huge demon's corpse, which actually absorbed part of the wave. Naruto followed the flames to their source before frowning a bit. Shika had been right, there were more enemies hiding. Rather another demon. It had the upper body of a skeleton with its bones being black. There were several things to note. The demon was completely covered in infernal flames. Its skull had a number of small horns growing from it, and instead of legs coming from its pelvis, its spine was actually elongated, giving the appearance of a long snake-like tail. From its shoulder blades extended a pair of demonic wings that had flames between the dark bones instead of the usual flesh-like membrane. Its arms were skeletal as well, but instead of 5 human fingers it had 4 enormous claws on its palms. Its wings and hands were outstretched and it was generating intense flames towards Urza's location. Naruto realized the corpse she was hiding behind wouldn't last much longer against such intense heat and she would be exposed to it eventually. It was time to catch the fire demon's attention. Naruto took in a deep breath and puffed his cheeks. Sky Dragon's ROAR. He aimed his attack at the flaming demon. The creature noticed the hurricane-like blast rapidly approaching and dodged it by flying into the air. The good news was that had forced it to stop channeling the flames towards Urza. The bad news, now Naruto had its attention. It flew towards the blonde, swiping its whip-like tail to create a flame wave aimed at him. Still having his Amzu Vernier active, Naruto decided it would be better to dodge. He didn't have the time to form some sort of defense with the water, plus it was better to bait his opponent further into the lake anyway. The blonde sped towards the center of the lake, noting the burning demon was still after him. All was going well, until a wall of flames erupted in front of him. Naruto barely managed to stop and turn around to notice he was in a circle of fire. Nowhere to run to now, human. Time to melt your flesh. The demon chuckled sinisterly as it flew above him. Naruto looked around the wall. Flames on the water's surface. How? I observed your battle from earlier. You seemed like a cunning adversary, so I anticipated you would probably run to the middle of the lake to somehow use the water to your advantage if you were to face against me. That is why I set this trap in advance. And don't bother going underwater. My flames are strong enough to reach you even then. Face your end, hairless ape. Naruto was about to retort before he saw something that made him smile a little. Not bad, but you failed to consider one thing. What? Unlike you, I have a good-looking partner. Urza appeared behind the demon and severed its neck bones. To her annoyance, apparently it didn't really need a neck as it merely rotated its skull 180 degrees to face the redhead. Foolish human. As if that would be enough. The demon snarled and whipped its tail in an attempt to hit the young woman, who not only blocked it with her sword, but severed it as well. This appendage needed to be attached to the main body though and simply fell into the lake. The water doused its flames and the bones crumbled to ash. Urza slashed at the demon again only to be blocked by one of the wings. It rotated its whole body to face her and swiped at the redhead with its large claws. The sorceress dodged by flapping her own armor's wings before counter-attacking. Naruto was still on the surface of the lake and was observing their exchange. He realized she was wearing a different suit of armor yet again. It consisted of 3 parts, a breastplate, a pair of gauntlets and a pair of greaves. The whole armor was elaborately decorated and painted in 3 colors, orange, crimson and black. It differed somehow from the others. The breastplate lacked pauldrons and had an appearance reminiscent of a one-piece swimsuit, leaving her shoulders completely exposed. It was colored in crimson and black and had 2 flame-like orange decorations, one at her chest and the other circling her waist like a belt. Around her neck she had an orange collar with a black bottom edge from which 2 metal straps connected with the back of her breastplate. On it a pair of black and crimson wings were attached, having forms similar to those of dragon wings. A lord in crimson with the edges around the elbow looking like flames. The greaves had the appearance of dragon claws and were crimson-colored as well. She had orange knee guards and black plates extended from them to her lower hips, with the edges having the shape of flames as well. Her scarlet hair was tied in a pair of high pigtails, held by 2 black clips resembling blazes, and she had 2 bangs framing her face. Her weapon was a large bastard sword with a crimson blade, having a black handle and a decorated orange handguard. Her guild mark could now be seen on the middle of her upper left arm. A blue-colored fairy with its legs outstretched in front and a pair of wings and tail outstretched behind. Naruto shook his head a bit. How many armors did Urza have? She wasn't kidding when she said she liked them. Did they all frame her body so well? Dispelling those thoughts for now, he continued watching the fight, until he noticed Sheikah flying right above the demon. This time a huge grin came to Naruto's face when he caught onto his friend's plan. Urza blocked a flame blast with her left hand and channeled some of her power to the gauntlet. Sure, this was fire-resistant armor, but a flame with such heat needed extra handling. She saw this as an opportunity, and with even more magical energy focused in her arm, she deflected the intense fires. The redhead was about to cut the demon, when a shout was heard from above them. Sky Dragon's wings. The Scarlet Beauty looked up to see Naruto, held by Sheikah's tail tied around his waist with his open right palm pointed at the demon. A violent whirling air surrounded his arm before it shot out and slammed into the infernal creature. The blast was so strong that it took their adversary to the lake's surface and crushed it into the waters. The spell wasn't finished though, as the whirlwind created a maelstrom with the screaming demon in the center. When the waters calmed down, they could see the skeletal body crumbling into ash and dissolving in the lake. Urza looked up. Nicely done. I was just about to slash it. Yeah, Naruto smiled as Sheikah brought him to her level. It might not have had a huge effect though, like when you cut its neck. I noticed the portion of its tail that you sliced turned to ash when the fire was extinguished, so I thought maybe that's how we could kill it. Some demons are much trickier to kill, unfortunately. You are right, I would have done the same, Urza nodded. Hee, what you did was already really awesome. Naruto gave her a huge grin. We should get out of here though, before any more of their buddies show up. They started flying towards the shore before Sheikah sighed. See, I told you it always gets troublesome when you say it's going to be a breeze. Sometimes I think you do it on purpose. The blonde just started laughing while Urza let out a smile. The group had resumed walking towards Nebula Town on the same road as before. They were still alert of their surroundings, in case the demons had friends that also felt the need to challenge them. After they had left the clearing with the lake, the thick mist had fallen down again and had completely covered the moon and stars, forcing them to use the lacrima torches to illuminate their way once more. The atmosphere was dominated by the same eerie silence from when they had first entered the forest. This time Naruto hadn't tried to lighten up the mood though. Urza sneaked another look at the blonde. Since the battle had ended, he had become unusually quiet and thoughtful. The redhead was a bit worried he might have been hurt, although he should have been able to heal himself. Maybe it was because they had killed the demons. Sensing he was being observed, Naruto turned to Urza and smiled slightly. What's up? Are you all right? The blonde gave her a confused look. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? You've been unusually quiet since the battle. I thought you might have been injured, but was it because we killed them? Was that your first time taking a life? No, of course not, the blonde exclaimed. I've been doing S-class missions since I was 14, so I've faced and killed plenty of demons before. It's just, he looked ahead. Yes. Urza lifted an eyebrow. She was quite surprised at what the blonde had said. After all, she herself started doing S-class missions when she was 15. Naruto stopped and turned to her. This is the first time one of them thanked me after I had slain it. Really? Was it the water one? I saw him grab you right after you plunged your hand through its chest. Now that she heard his reason for being unsettled, she felt the same way. Naruto nodded slightly. Right, that's when it thanked me before it dissolved in the lake. That's interesting, Jiraiya muttered. More like troublesome, Sheikah snorted. I don't remember anything like that happening when we faced demons with Mistgun. The White Exceed continued, ignoring the lazy cat. I'm sure he would have told you anyway. Yeah, Naruto just nodded again. This has been troubling me since the battle ended. Something's fishy about this job. Urza placed a hand on his shoulder. There's no use wondering and worrying about it now. I'm sure as we complete this assignment, things will become clearer. The blonde gave her a huge smile. Yeah, you're right. Let's get going. We're not that far from the town. We'll probably reach it in 10 to 15 minutes. They started walking again, but this time, Naruto broke the silence rather quickly. You know, I was really surprised at your armors. I didn't know you could use one to fly. What were they called? Urza smiled. Yeah, among other things. Well, I told you about the giant's armor. The first one I used, the one that was black and silver, is called Black Wing Armor. It greatly increases my offensive capabilities as well as granting me the ability to fly. The redhead seized her explanation when she noticed Naruto had stopped and was watching her with wide eyes. Now I remember, that armor. You are Uncle Han's little girl, he exclaimed, pointing at her. Urza's jaw fell slightly and she blushed. Wah! How do you know about that? And where do you know Hans from? The person they were talking about was a very large, muscled man, towering 2 meters over the ground. He had brown and graying at places short hair as well as a huge beard. He was in his late 30s and also happened to be one of the greatest blacksmiths on the continent, as well as the person that crafted most of her armors and weapons. I think the same way you do. He's the one that makes my weapons. Naruto motioned to his kunai. I needed someone with a lot of skill for the design I had in mind. So I was referred to him by my rune magic teacher, and after I passed his trial, he agreed to make them for me. Urza remembered how his kunai had extended and turned into a short claymore during his fight with the water demon and nodded in recognition. Now she was curious about that weapon. Maybe the blonde would give her one so she could inspect it closely and try it out. Then another thought occurred. Wait, what do you mean trial? She turned a questioning gaze towards him. Naruto visibly shuddered at the memory. He called it that and said some nonsense about how his weapons could be wielded only by the strong and pure-hearted. In reality, he just beat me up for an hour in a friendly spar. He also said by wielding his weapons I was also wielding his name, and if I stained it, next time it would be for longer. Urza was quite confused by what she heard. I never had to pass a trial like that, she muttered looking down. The blonde looked at her surprised, but then a mischievous grin crept on his face. Of course not. You're his little girl, after all. Urza gave him a look, which was kind of ruined because of her slight blush. Stop saying that. How do you know about it anyway? The young mage just let out a hearty laugh as he recalled his first meeting with Uncle Hans. A very battered 16-year-old Naruto slumped into one of the chairs in the smithy. Trial of pure heart. His ass. The old man was just bored once to hit something. The blonde couldn't remember the last time he was so exhausted he couldn't actually use his healing magic. He would need to rest and breath calmly for a while, before he could take care of some of the more serious bruising. Hans had gone into one of the rooms with the sketches and ideas for Naruto's kunai. He had said he needed to think about it for a while and see how to go about the crafting and the types of materials he would need. The blonde heard snoring from one of the tables and saw Sheikah asleep over one of his books. That annoyed the teenager quite a bit. The cat had probably been sleeping peacefully for the past hour, while he was getting his ass whooped. Naruto would get him for that later. For now, he decided to try and see if there was anything interesting in the smithy. He looked around and cursed when bolts of pain shot through his body from the simple movement. He was going to get Hans for this as well. His eyes fell on an interesting suit of armor. It was black with silver lines on various places and it looked like it had wings attached to it. Grunting, Naruto stood up and went to look it over since he had nothing better to do anyway. When he got closer he saw it was actually quite beautiful and elaborate. It kind of looked like a dress. Wonder who this is for? Naruto muttered as he traced a hand over one of the wings. Ah, I see you noticed my masterpiece. Han's booming voice made the blonde jump slightly. The blacksmith approached him. This is the black wing armor. I created it from scratch for my little girl. Pride was evident in the middle-aged man's voice. Naruto lifted an eyebrow. You have a daughter, Uncle Hans? Master never said anything about that. The blacksmith laughed. No, she's a client, but she's very important to me. The blonde was about to ask what her name was, when Hans placed a massive palm on his shoulder and squeezed it slightly. Now, Naruto, your master tells me you're quite the player, so let me warn you. Oh come on. The teenager interrupted him. It was one girl, and I was drunk, because master had made me drink alcohol. Still, you asked the girl out by yourself. Your master had nothing to do with that now, right? Naruto looked down, blushing slightly. I thought so. Listen, Naruto. This girl has had a hard life, and even though she isn't my daughter, she is still very sweet, kind and pure, and also happens to be very precious to me. If you ever meet her, watch it. Han's hand squeezed the blonde's shoulder hard. Or else. Even though he was wincing from the pain, Naruto still managed to gulp and nod slightly. Gotcha. He decided it wasn't a good idea to ask what her name was right now, or ever for that matter. Great. Han's grip immediately loosened. Now come over here, I've come up with the design of your weapon. Also, one of the materials I need is a bit pricey and considering. Naruto finished his story. Even though she was embarrassed by the way Hans had talked about her, Erza couldn't help but feel really happy about the things the blacksmith had said. He was always kind to her and was interested in her life and if she was doing well, yet the Scarlet Beauty never suspected she was that important to him. Now that she thought about it, he didn't have any children, so maybe in a way he thought of her as a daughter. Maybe he viewed Naruto in a similar way too. Next time she visited him, she was going to stay a bit longer. So I'm guessing the third suit of armor was also made by him. What's it called? Erza was snapped from her thoughts by Naruto's question. The name is Flame Empress Armor. It halves the power of fire attacks and I can also use it to deflect them. Like the Black Wing armor, it also grants me the ability to fly for a while. It was quite beautiful and elaborate. I'm sure Uncle Hans spent a lot of time on it. That's not the only thing that was beautiful and elaborate. Jiraiya snickered. The blonde sent a small glare his way, before he turned back to the redhead. Well, he's not wrong. So how many armors do you have? Ursa smirked. Over 100. I have over 200 weapons as well. Naruto whistled. Now that's impressive. Do they all have magical properties? Which one is your favorite? Well, we're here. Urza was suddenly interrupted by Shika. We can finally get some decent sleep. And true, they had arrived at Nebula Town. They passed by a huge banner with the name, before looking around. The mist was quite thick even here, making the lights coming from the structures and streetlights quite dim. The whole place had a ghost town look going for it, which was a bit unexpected since this was a popular tourist resort. There wasn't anyone else on the streets except for them and the mages kept on walking on what they assumed was one of the main streets. So, know any of the hotels around here? Have you made a reservation somewhere or? Naruto turned towards Urza. No, I wasn't able to get any of the brochures from the Onibus 1 train station because I was running late. I didn't make any reservations either because I took off the same day I took the assignment. Originally I had planned on picking a hotel while traveling. Yeah, our decision to come here was kind of spontaneous as well. Naruto nodded in understanding. We were still able to look over a few brochures though. Any preferences? As long as the rooms are clean, the bathrooms have hot water, the beds are comfortable and there are no critters, I'm okay with anything. Money isn't a problem either. Naruto grabbed his chin in thought and hummed. Why don't we go to the Blue-Leafed Clover? It's an inn that has hot springs. Jiraiya tried his luck. The blonde sighed. How come you know there's an inn with hot springs in every town we go to? I thought you said you've never been here before. I haven't. But I always check the brochures of the town we're going to for one. After all, I need to be prepared. Jiraiya took one out. The place is quite decent and the price isn't too high. Naruto shook his head and turned to Urza. It's up to you. I can promise he won't bother you, while you're in the baths at least. We can go somewhere else as well, if you want. I don't mind that much, he's a cat. There's nothing he can do really. Urza gave Jiraiya one of her long hard looks, although, I better not end up in one of those books of yours. The white feline shuffled uneasily under the gaze, before it gulped and chuckled innocently. Heh heh, of course not. Never even crossed my mind. Urza nodded and waved her hand decisively. Good. Lead the way then. They had checked into the inn without any problems. In fact, the hosts were really happy to see them. Apparently, there weren't many tourists left, because of the demon sightings and attacks. They had decreased even further when rumors spread a mage guild had been hired to deal with them. After all, no one wanted to be in the middle of a battlefield. Naruto and Urza had each taken a room, and after they had settled in, they decided to visit the hot springs. Jiraiya was taken with Naruto and he actually behaved, at least until Urza had left the women's side. Afterwards, they had changed and Naruto and Shika had picked the redhead up so they could go to dinner. Their rooms were actually next to each other, so in case something happened they could come to each other's help as soon as possible. They had gone to one of the hostesses and she had lead them to a room where they would be served dinner. At least that's what Naruto had thought. When the door was opened, a fully served table greeted them. There were all sorts of dishes, from various seafood to different types of cooked meat, as well as a huge assortment of salads. There was even a pot, from which the blonde's keen senses detected the glorious smell of ramen. Foo. Urza smirked, satisfied by Naruto and Shika's shocked expressions. I hope you don't mind. Since we agreed tonight was on me, I took the liberty to order. If there's anything additional you want, don't hesitate to order it. The Kates turned to her. You're kidding, right? No, find his jaw. It looks like you've ordered everything on the menu. Without letting go of her smirk, Urza just went to the table and sat down, promptly followed by her temporary partners. So where's Jiraiya? She turned to Naruto. Do you really want to know something troublesome like that? As long as we don't hear screams, it means everything is fine. Shika snorted before deciding he should focus his attention elsewhere, namely some of the seafood dishes on the table. He's right. Mistgun told us he tends to wander off during the evenings, especially if they were staying at a hot spring. But he returns in the mornings without many problems. Don't worry, he knows how to get me if things go bad, or if he finds something. The blonde reassured her as he made a pass for the ramen. Urza nodded and decided she should join them, before the food went cold. After the main course was over, the desserts were brought in, which consisted of several slices of different type of cakes. Like the previous night, the redhead had shown the most enthusiasm about eating them, and again like the previous night, neither Naruto nor Shika dared to point it out. So what's our plan tomorrow? Naruto sipped his tea as he looked at his cards. After the dinner was over with, he suggested playing some games like last night to relax a bit. First thing in the morning, we'll go meet the client. I usually do it the moment I reach the destination of the assignment, but we arrived late. Besides, we had traveled for 2 days and engaged in battle, so we didn't have a very presentable look. That sounds like a good plan. Maybe it will shed some light on the strange assignment. Naruto nodded. I think we should also gather some information from the townspeople afterwards. Shika added as he drew 2 cards. Things like when did the attacks start occurring, did anything strange happen, are there suspicious people around? That's a good suggestion, we could find out the location from where the demons are appearing that way. Urza agreed and dropped her cards. Full house. Shika sighed and revealed a flush. They looked expectantly at the blonde. 2 pairs of jacks. So meet the client, ask around, beat the demons. Sounds good to me. Naruto smiled as he collected the biscuits they were using instead of money. Jiraiya would actually be able to help a lot with the second part. He has a knack for sniffing out rumors, leads and all sorts of information. Oh, so he's not just a pervert then? Urza's dismay at the loss of sweets was replaced by surprise. Of course, he can be really useful sometimes, and he's not that bad of a writer either, just tends to lose focus sometimes and delve too much into the spicy portion of his story. Naruto paused the card shuffling and chuckled. I think his perverted nature is a result of the place he was born at. Urza was once again surprised to see Shikamaru chuckling as well. Curiosity nudging her, she asked, where was he born at? Naruto could barely hold his laughter now, so Shika answered, if you have an exceed as a guildmate, Then you probably know we hatch from eggs, right? After receiving the redhead's nod, the black feline continued. His eggs somehow ended up at a women's bathhouse. And apparently, it hatched during the rush hour. Now tell me, what would most women do if a cute kitten suddenly showed up in front of them? This time Naruto couldn't keep himself from laughing, born and crushed in a sea of boobs. We think he's trying to recreate the experience. Shika laughed as well. The next morning found the group of mages walking towards the town hall. The mist had actually cleared a bit, or at least wasn't so thick you would need a knife to cut through it. The day had started normally for Naruto, with him doing his usual training routine after he had woken up. After he had taken a dip in the hot springs, he met Urza, a sleepy Shikamaru and a grinning Jiraiya for breakfast. During the meal, the White Exceed had started telling them what he had found out during the night. Apparently, the demon sightings had initially occurred 4 months ago. At first the people thought they were just apparitions from the mist. It wasn't until someone was attacked that they realized they were real demons. The mayor though had insisted it was still a product of the region and that people were getting paranoid. Obviously, he had been worried rumors of demons would just scare tourists away, so he tried to convince everyone not to worry and that surely the area would stabilize. Jiraiya made a dramatic pause before he continued eerily. It didn't. Attacks increased in frequency and people started going missing. In truth, a lot of the townspeople are really worried and had wanted to ask for help sooner. The mayor was still stupidly maintaining things would get better. Apparently, they don't even know he actually asked for help. The last time it was brought up was a week ago when 5 people at once went missing, yet he still refused. So the name of the client on the flyer is actually his? Naruto asked. That's right. Which begs the question, what happened to make him change his decision so suddenly? Jiraiya had a grim expression. Naruto was right, you are good at gathering information. Urza lifted an eyebrow. How did you find out all that? The white cat turned to her and grinned. Girls talk. Seeing her confused expression, he decided to elaborate. I heard the hostesses talking among themselves about it. They were sharing various rumors on the whole situation and I thought it would be a good idea to listen. But they wouldn't talk about that in front of a total stranger, much less someone that could be a tourist, Urza pointed out. Jiraiya chuckled. Of course not. But I am a cat. Go in, wrap around their legs, snuggle in their chest when they pick you up. His grin became slightly perverted at this part as he continued. Purr when they pet you, lick their fingers. When was the last time you paid any attention to a cute cat doing catty things, even if it is slightly larger? Exactly. So while they absent-mindedly play with me, I listen to their conversations, to the rumors going around and pick out things that might be important. So that's how you do it. That's actually pretty smart. Naruto commented. The fact you found a way to gather information, while still doing perverted things makes it brilliant. But of course, I am the great cat sage, Jiraiya. The White Exceed struck a pose, which was promptly ignored by everyone. We should go and meet the mayor. I wonder what was the cause behind such sudden change in behavior, Shika cut in. I'm more interested in the fact he didn't ask for help sooner, Naruto frowned. Maintaining business is one thing, but you should care for your people when they start disappearing. Well, I do need to meet the client anyway, to inform him the mage that had accepted his request is here. Urza stood up, so let's go. And here they were now, entering the town hall. After a couple of insistent questions from Urza, they found out the location of the mayor's office. Naruto realized the girl could be very impatient at times, just like him, which was rather surprising. His impression was that she was the cool and collected type, not the short fuse one. They went to the second floor and entered a small hall. At the end there was a pair of large wooden doors and before them was a wooden desk, occupied by a young woman wearing glasses with her brown hair tied in a bun. When they saw her, Urza started walking towards her deliberately. She stood in front of the desk and said sternly, I'm here to see the mayor, is he inside? The secretary looked up, eyeing the redhead and the blonde, before she opened a calendar notebook. Do you have an appointment? What are your names? We are the mages that accepted his assignment to take care of the demon problem. He should be expecting us. Is he inside? Urza placed a hand on the desk and leaned slightly, irritation clearly present in her voice for having to ask the same question twice. Yes, but I don't see you on the schedule and you can't. The redhead drew door and started walking, without even bothering to listen to the secretary. Wait. You can't enter without a. The young brunette stood up hastily and tried to block Urza's way, which was a mistake, since the Scarlet Beauty just head-butted her, knocking her out immediately. As the poor secretary slumped into the ground, Naruto gaped. What the hell just happened? He blinked and wiped his eyes. Yeah, the secretary was indeed lying on the ground, unconscious. Scary. The blonde muttered, while Shika let out a strained sigh. See, I told you she was troublesome. You never listened to me. You say that about all the women we meet. Naruto absent-mindedly said while he bent down and picked a gasping Jiraiya. They would laugh later. Now it would be better to go after the redhead, before she ended up knocking out the mayor as well. That's because they're all troublesome. The Black Exceed had a very irritated look as he followed Naruto. What is the meaning of this? Came a voice from inside the mayor's office after Urza had burst in. Naruto almost groaned. Anyone that actually said, HWAT, tended to be an annoying pompous jerk. He entered the room to see a large man with short gray hair standing from his seat and leaning on his desk. His face was round and red from frustration and he had blue eyes along with a double chin. Sweat was pouring from his forehead and Naruto realized his face may have been red, because it was a bit warm in the room. He wore a black suit with a blue shirt and striped tie and had a monocle with a tiny chain attached to one of his pockets. Are you Mayor Rod Frob? Urza inquired. Who the hell wants to know? And where's Janice? My name is Urza Scarlet from the Mage Guild Fairy Tale. I have accepted your assignment and came to introduce myself as well as find out more about it. What the hell are you talking about? I never posted any assignments asking for mages. The redhead's gaze hardened and she approached his desk, glaring at the large man. The mayor felt cold sweat replace the one that was already pouring and he promptly backed off into his chair when the girl stood right in front of him. The look she was giving him intimidated him to no end. Urza reached for her purse, took out the assignment flyer and slammed it on the desk. This is your name, right? And this is the Nebula Town stamp? She traced a finger on the paper. What is this? The mayor shouted with newfound bravery at this outrage. I never made such a request. You expect me to pay this much? You thieves? I'm calling the... The man found himself unable to continue, since Urza's glare intensified and a small portion of magical power started leaking around her. What did you call me? Barely restrained anger could be heard in her voice as she leaned forward, making the large man try to defy the laws of physics and shrink in his chair. Now, Naruto decided it was time he intervened before things got ugly. Who thought he of all people would be in the position of acting as the level-headed one? Usually he was the one that couldn't keep his cool and would go around punching people for pissing him off. Let's all calm down, I'm sure this can be cleared up quickly. And who are you? The mayor managed to find his trembling voice while he looked at the blonde. I'm Naruto Marvel and these. He motioned at the two Exceed. Are Shikamaru and Jiraiya. We are from Cage Shelter and accompanying Miss Scarlet on her assignment to deal with the demon threat in this town. The blonde explained while approaching the desk. I made no such. The large man tried again, but was cut off by the young mage. Your name is Rod Frob, right? If you look at the flyer, you'll also see the official stamp of the town. This time the mayor inspected the assignment sheet and indeed his name was there. Not only that, but the town's seal as well as his signature. How is this possible? I don't remember ever doing something like this. Shika decided it was his turn to cut in. Whatever is going on, Miss Scarlet has already accepted an official assignment and has taken the duty of finishing it. Upon completion, the designated award must be paid in full to her, as per agreement of the terms with the Magic Council. If you are unhappy, I'm sure you can take the issue up with them. The Exceed smirked evilly, although an accusation of such a proportion would demand a full investigation. After all, making assignment requests is a serious matter and many mages take them prepared to risk their lives. This one in particular was classified as S-class, so the council would probably have to freeze all the town's financial accounts until the matter is resolved. And since your name is on the request, then they would put a hold on your assets as well. I'm sure everything would be cleared. Eventually. The large man paled when he heard this. Naruto couldn't help but smile. His friend knew his stuff as usual. The blonde turned towards the mayor. Old man Frob, let us help you. Word about the job has already gone out, so people know there are demons here. If we take care of them, business would pick up so such an amount wouldn't be a big deal in the long term. Not to mention your people are scared and worried since the attacks have intensified. Mayor Frob clenched his jaw as he contemplated over everything. The blonde was right, they could use the help. And the damage was already done anyway. In truth, 12 million was only fair if the mages did get rid of the demons. He would find out how this assignment was posted if it was the last thing he did. The old man stood up and went to a large window, overlooking the center of the town. Very well. There's no need to contact the council, your reward will be paid in full if the job is finished. I don't know how it was posted, but now that it's done it would be foolish to deny it. He turned to Urza. You will have our full cooperation. The Scarlet Beauty had calmed down by this point and simply nodded. First, we need to learn more about the attacks and the sightings. Where did they first occur, the frequency, the victims? Every bit of information would help us out. Captain Pike of the Town Guard would have all that. I will have my secretary get someone to escort you to the guardhouse. Anything else? You really don't know anything about this assignment, old man Frob? Naruto pointed at the flyer. It says a demon, but clearly there is more than one. Not to mention on our way here we were attacked by 3 of them. I told you, boy, this is the first I've heard of this. The mayor frowned at the blonde's lack of respect. How did you manage to survive anyway? You must be extremely lucky. What, those guys? They were no big deal. We're just that awesome, Naruto boasted. Frob was surprised, but didn't show it. Instead he turned to the window and smirked. So that was the power of a mage. He had read a report about 3 guardsmen fighting and being slaughtered by a single demon, and these children were able to defeat 3 on their own. Maybe they would really be able to help. If that is all, I suggest you get going. Janice. The mayor shouted and his brunette secretary appeared at the door, stumbling a bit, obviously still in shock from being knocked out. Yes, sir. Arrange an escort for these mages to the guardhouse. Relay a message to Captain Pike to cooperate fully with them and give them any information they need to know. Understood, sir. The secretary glared at the 2 mages and more pointedly at Urza. Follow me. The mages started walking after the brunette and went down the stairs. Naruto noticed she still had some difficulty walking and ran up to her, placing a glowing finger on her forehead. The young woman gasped. What the hell do? You? She stopped midway, realizing her headache was gone. Better. Naruto gave her a bright smile. The brunette blushed and looked away, nodding slightly. Yeah. Thank you. They continued walking until they reached the doors of the town hall, and the secretary approached a short guardsman and started talking with him. After a bit, both of them returned and he introduced himself. Nice has given me instructions to lead you to Captain Pike. This way. The mages just nodded and started following him. On their way though, Naruto fell back a bit and motioned to Urza to do the same, before turning to Jiraiya. Anything? The white Exceed shook his head. A couple of reports related to the demons from Captain Pike, a bottle of scotch, and the rest looked town and tourist related. I didn't have too much time to look over everything, but I also found the Nebula Town stamp, so it wasn't stolen. Urza raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Jiraiya grinned. While you were talking with the mayor I went through his desk for anything of interest that might help us. What? How? When? After the mayor stood up from his desk and went to his window. The feline winked. I told you, no one pays attention to a cat. Don't worry, he didn't take anything. Naruto cut in. But the whole thing is fishy and the mayor might have been hiding something. If he didn't make the request, then who? Well, it must have been someone with access to his office. The most likely suspect is the secretary, although there might be others as well. Shika joined in. It doesn't matter for now though, I think we should focus more on the assignment. What are you thinking? Naruto asked his friend. Obviously, we'll be going to the guardhouse. I think we'll learn a lot about the demons, the attacks and the sightings from there. However, sometimes not everything reaches the authorities. The lazy Exceed turned towards Jiraiya. I think it would be best if we split up. Since you're the best among us at picking out information from the streets, you should go around town and look for any interesting rumors or things the guardsmen might have missed. In the meantime, the rest of us will try to find a pattern or location from the reports. That's a very good plan. Let's go with it. Urza now started to see how the trio of Kates were actually a very good team. Jiraiya would find out information, Shikamaru would do the planning, and Naruto was the muscle. That's not to say the blonde was stupid. In fact, from what she saw from the battle and the games they had played during the evenings, Urza had realized he was actually quite cunning. It's just that they were in tune with each other and everyone had his job in the team. She briefly wondered what the other cage shelter members were like. "Great!" Naruto exclaimed. "I think Jiraiya should come with us to the guardhouse just to see its location before he departs though. It would save him the time of looking for it if he finds anything. Also, the assignment is serious, so please stay focused, there will be time for other things when we're done." "HMPF, you don't need to tell me. You know I'm always focused when the job is serious." The cat huffed before he noticed the look Naruto was giving him. "Okay, mostly focused. Just keep it together," the blonde responded as they reached a building looking like a small fort. It had a large banner over the arching gateway, on which the words, "Nebula Town Guard," were written. Seeing it, Jiraiya let out his wings and flew away, giving the group a small wave. Naruto, Urza and Shika kept following the guardsmen and entered the building. The clear late morning sky made a certain Exceed quite happy. Without the presence of the mist, he could fly over the bustling streets and observe the people with no trouble. Even with the reduced flow of tourists, there were still quite a lot of people going around and taking the sights of the beautiful resort. Although most of the guided tours that took groups out of the town were cancelled because of the threat, there was an abundance of stores, cafes, and restaurants to occupy the time of Nebula's visitors. The cat himself used the opportunity to look at the sights, particularly taking notice of the female population circling around the town. The warm summer sun and the clear weather had made them dress lightly to his enormous pleasure. He even noticed two young women in mini skirts, chatting happily while looking around the various clothing stores. Target acquired. Folding his wings, he made a nosedive towards the ground, picking up great speed in the process. Just before the impact with the ground he pulled up, passing by the two ladies with the generated wind blowing their skirts up. They let out an embarrassed scream and quickly covered themselves, but it was all too late. "Ooh hi hi hi." Jiraiya giggled perversely, burning the product of the unfortunate accident into his mind. He was glad he was alone right now, since Naruto would have probably scolded him. Shika would have muttered his signature word in a generally uncaring manner. And as for the third member of their temporary group, Jiraiya shivered a bit, imagining her reaction. Even though she had led him to his own devices so far, the white Exceed had no doubt Urza would have labeled his maneuver as inappropriate and would have proceeded into physically scolding him. Still, she was by far one of the most beautiful young ladies he had come across of so far. Even though he knew it would be quite dangerous to do so, he planned on using her as a template for one of his characters. It was easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission after all. The only problem so far was that she was quite wary of him, so he couldn't take an appropriate peek. Then again, with the way she changed between her armors, it was only a matter of time. Thinking of that, he remembered the battle with the demons at the lake. Without a doubt Urza was strong and Jiraiya even had the sneaking suspicion she hadn't been serious at the time. It was nice for a change to have some backup, especially since it looked like this job was actually going to be quite dangerous. He briefly wondered what it would be like to see a serious Titania. If she was anything like Naruto, then it would have probably ended in a second. What if the two of them had a spar? Engaged in a heated battle, the two of them slashing at each other, each swing narrowly missing critical locations but at the same time tearing their clothes. Their bodies would be covered in sweat, their breathing would be hard and each attack would bring them closer and closer to each other. The redhead would change her armor, briefly exposing herself for a moment and causing the blonde to stumble and fall over her, taking both of them by surprise. They would look into each other's eyes and feel the heat radiating from their pressed bodies, their lips inching closer and closer. That was it. His next book would start just like that. Two mages meet and engage in a fight, deciding later on to work together, their relationship blossoming from physical attraction into emotional affection. This was going to be a bestseller, better than any book before, even the one he had used Naruto as the template. And with the profits, he would take a nice vacation somewhere outside of the country until things cooled off. At this point Jiraiya realized something had been tugging at the back of his mind. Wasn't there something he was supposed to be doing? Oh right, gather information. The Exceed quickly ran a list of places where the rumor mills would be gathered. It was a bit early for the hot springs, and since it was approaching noon, maybe he should go around the cafes. Preferably those that had waitresses with short skirts. After checking in at the front desk, Naruto, Urza and Shika followed the private to the second floor. Shika had muttered it was troublesome to climb the stairs, so he had opted for lying on Naruto's head, whence he observed the surroundings. They had passed by a large room with many tables and chairs where around 10 guardsmen sat while having a snack or writing a report. That was most likely the mess hall. On the second floor they reached a white door that had a sign, "Captain of the Guard," on it. Their guide knocked and opened it after hearing an "Enter." Naruto and Urza followed, with the blonde ducking slightly as to not hit his friend. The captain's office had a rectangular shape with yellowing walls and a wooden floor. A fire at the left wall. 2 couches faced each other in front of the fireplace with a small coffee table between them. The captain's desk sat in front of a window on the right wall, a nice view of the town beyond the pane of glass. Stacks of papers stood on each side of the desk, the mages noting several pictures frames depicting various guardsmen and what appeared to be a happy family at the corners. Behind the photos and between the papers sat a man signing a document with a pen. He was in his mid-30s with short light brown hair that had a few white strands here and there. Green eyes with dark circles around them signified he had been staying late recently. He looked up slightly before going back to his paperwork. "Sir." The private saluted, and after he was waved off he promptly continued. "There was an assignment posted asking for the assistance of a mage guild in dealing with the demon threat. These are the mages that have answered it, and Mayor Frob has instructed we give them our full cooperation." The man behind the desk lifted his head and regarded the mages with a shocked expression. He looked over them for a couple of moments, before turning to the other guardsman. "Thank you, Private Stan. Will that be all?" "Yes, sir." The private saluted, before turning and going out. The older man stood up and gave a salute himself. "My name is Jason Pike. I am captain of the Nebula Town Guard. Looks like we will be working together from now on." "My name is Urza Scarlet and I am from Fairy Tail." The redhead gave him a short nod. "I am Naruto Marvel from Cage Shelter. And this is Shikamaru." The blonde motioned to his friend still lying on his head. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." The captain motioned to 2 chairs as he sat in his own. After the 2 mages were seated, he carried on. "I didn't know mages from different guilds could take on assignments together." The 2 looked at each other, before Naruto spoke. "Actually, she is the one that has taken the assignment. I was on my way here to offer my assistance, without knowing there had been a job posted, and we met on the way. After we discussed it, it was decided I would accompany her." "Well, as long as you've figured it out." The captain nodded. "To be honest, this is the first I've heard of such an assignment. I've tried convincing the mayor before, but he is a pretty stubborn person and just told me to take care of it on my own. I have to say, I am glad he changed his mind." Naruto and Urza looked at each other again, and this time the redhead was the one that spoke. "Actually, Captain, you should be familiar with the security of the town hall and particularly the mayor's office. Do you know who has access to it?" Pike raised an eyebrow at the question, but answered regardless. "Well, there's the mayor of course and his secretary. I myself have access to it as well, and I think that's all. Oh, and the janitors, I suppose." "Why?" "The thing is, the mayor wasn't the one that posted the request. We've discussed with him and he had no idea the assignment even existed. He has no idea who could have done it as well." Urza explained as she took out the flyer and showed it to the captain. The man took it and studied it for a bit, focusing on the stamp. After a moment he returned it. "I don't know what to tell you. I can at least say the stamp is authentic. The signature looks like his as well. Maybe if you asked your magic council who exactly made the request." He trailed off. "We can do that, but the priority right now is dealing with the demons." The redhead waved her hand dismissively. "Very well. The town guard will help out however we can. What do you need?" "If I may." Shika spoke up as he jumped from Naruto's head onto the desk in front of the captain, making him jump slightly in surprise. "Why you can talk." The man pointed at the cat with a shocked expression. "I am an exceed, my kind can fly as well." He turned a questioning gaze at the redhead, who understood what he meant and simply nodded with a small smile. "If you could give us all of your reports of the demon sightings and attacks, starting from the earliest one possible. Even those that might have been attributed to the magical area, everything suspicious would be good. I have some of the recent reports here. I will arrange for the rest to be brought here. Anything else?" A map of the town and the nearby surroundings and a big board with pins. Also, which is the biggest and most visited area of the guardhouse. "That would be the mess hall, but I think it would be best if we set the board there." That way as many of the guardsmen as possible would be able to take a look at it and someone might remember something related to the case. The largest map you have would be best. The captain nodded at the confusing request and stood up. He started collecting some papers, putting them in a stack that grew progressively in size before handing it to Naruto. These are the most recent reports from the past month. He motioned for the mages to follow him as he exited the room. Naruto looked at the stack of paper in his hands. There were so many. And these were just some of the reports for the last month. Frowning, he followed after Urza, who picked Shika up from the desk. They went down to the mess hall where Pike gave orders to a couple of the guardsmen. 20 minutes later there was a huge map set on a board over one of the walls. On the nearest table there were a couple of boxes filled with the reports of the previous months. This is everything you've asked for. We've even gathered the reports for the past 6 months even though the first demon sighting was 4 months ago. The captain told them. So many of them. There must be hundreds. Are all of them related to the demons? Naruto turned towards Pike. Most. The man clenched his jaw and looked at the boxes. How many victims were there? Why haven't you asked for help sooner? The blonde frowned. I tried convincing the mayor but he wouldn't budge. At first he insisted they were just products of the mist and when the attacks started he would only order us to take care of it. As they increased, so did his